Imagine seeing floating numbers above everyone's head. Pretty cool, right? Except these numbers show exactly how many lives that person has taken or is destined to take in the future. The main character is driven by a dark past and a scar deeper than any physical wound. To get revenge, he hunts down future murderers before they can strike. But he follows one strict rule. If someone is destined to kill only one person, he lets them go. It is just trading one life for another, a total waste of time. But if their count is 2 or 200, he absolutely obliterates those monsters. But wait, doesn't killing that many people make him a monster too? The public thinks so, dubbing him, Number, Korea's most wanted serial killer. The cops are throwing everything into catching this guy, unaware he acts for the greater good, though maybe a good reason is not enough. Our story kicks off with a news broadcast warning everyone about this elusive killer, who is still loose after more than 20 murders. Even though the victims live in the same city, they share absolutely no connection. They seem to be chosen completely at random. With those terrifying reports echoing in her mind, a woman named Sei stares at the portrait of her murdered sister. Cut to a few days later, and she is back at her desk, glaring at yet another update about the killer. She feels utterly drained. That is until her colleague's voice snaps her right back to reality. Her coworker Yoon asks if her head is hurting. After their shift, the office crew heads out to a restaurant, where Sei assures everyone she is fine now and was just a bit spaced out. Yoon still seems pretty worried, bringing up how sick she got last time. But another coworker tells him to just give Sei some space. After all, the tragedy barely just happened. Deep in grief, Sei remembers her sister sitting right here and drinking with them just days ago. She was so full of life back then, which made walking into the cold morgue to see her corpse even more traumatic. Identifying her sister was a total nightmare. She looked terribly pale. As her hand slipped from the gurney, Sei noticed something chilling. The number 2 was carved directly into her cold flesh. That is the classic calling card of Korea's most notorious murderer. Back in the present, Yun suddenly asks exactly how many victims this monster has claimed so far. More than 30. Another colleague notes the count keeps rising, especially with copycats copying the crimes. Honestly, it leaves everyone feeling completely hopeless. It feels like the cops are totally useless. Another coworker snaps that those lazy officers deserve to die, too. But for C, none of this gossip really matters anymore. Gossip won't bring her sister back. As a journalist, writing about crimes after they happen feels completely futile. To her, the only real solution is pulling the problem out by its roots. There must be some way to spot monsters before they destroy lives. Why not just eliminate them before they can even strike? These dark thoughts have been looping in her head for days. The gathering ends, Yun calls out to Sei, telling her to stay safe and stick to streets that have security cameras installed. He smoothly suggests that dating someone might help her heal, clearly hinting at himself. Sei just gives a polite smile and says goodbye, completely unaware of a dark figure watching them from a rooftop. Diving back into the case files, Sei reviews the reports, showing absolutely no links between the victims. The single, terrifying common thread is that carved number left on each corpse. Is it a lone wolf or a whole gang? What is the motive? Nobody knows. It is completely unprecedented, leaving zero clues behind. Seeing this killer's face and surviving is a statistical miracle. Looking at the interview from victim 21, the survivor mentions a bizarre series of coincidences. She had gone Aja, then come out for dinner, then took an unusual shortcut home. That was when she stumbled into a nightmare, finding the killer looming over a blood-soaked body. Meanwhile, the witness from the 13th murder swore the street was full of people initially, but out of nowhere, everyone seemed to vanish. Suddenly, she was completely alone with the hunter. The killer moved with absolute certainty, like he could literally read their minds. C is deeply puzzled. Why would a ruthless monster spare these witnesses and risk getting caught? The first survivor thought she was done for when the killer spoke to her. Instead, he simply told her that her number was 1, so she was safe. Sei desperately wants more clues, but the police are keeping those carved numbers tightly classified. Honestly, it is completely bizarre. How does a criminal this wild survive in Korea without ever hiding bodies? Her inbox is flooded with useless garbage, but one anonymous tip instantly grabs her attention. Sensing a massive breakthrough, she dials the sender immediately. That night, Sei sets off, absolutely thrilled. The lead is even more promising than she hoped. But as she walks, completely lost in thought, a sinister figure tracks her from the shadows. Her smile quickly fades when she hears footsteps closing in. Sei suddenly remembers the warning from that 13th witness. When things start going down, the streets suddenly go completely dead. Panic sets in. As her pursuer closes the gap, she takes off in a desperate sprint, but the man snatches her arm, causing her to trip and crash to the ground. She is trapped. Out of nowhere, Yun charges in and tackles the attacker to the ground. He grabs Sei by the hand, screaming at her to run as fast as possible. Sei gasps, asking what he is doing here. Yoon reminds her he works close by, asking if that crazy pursuer is the serial killer. The attacker keeps hot on their heels as they sprint toward the main street, desperate to find a crowd and lose him. Yoon pulls her into an alleyway, claiming it is a quick shortcut, but the moment they turn the corner, she freezes in absolute terror. It is a dead end. She spins around to warn him, only to see Yoon raising a massive iron bar. Talk about a brutal betrayal. Now trapped, she watches her original stalker catch up, grumbling that Yoon ran too fast. After all, the plan worked. He successfully lured her to this blind spot with 0 security cameras, the perfect place for a murder. Trembling on the cold ground, Se begs to know why Yoon is doing this. The accomplice sneers, saying she and her sister almost ruined everything. Se is utterly baffled. In her mind, her sister was the victim of that infamous serial killer. In reality, these two did it and carved a number into her flesh to frame the infamous killer. As they bicker over what to do with Se, Yoon demands to deliver the final, lethal strike himself. Just as the accomplice steps forward, they realize they have company. The thug barks at the newcomer, telling him to get lost and mind his own business, but the real killer just stares, a piercing blue glow radiating from his eye. Hovering above them, the floating numbers appear. With cold certainty, he declares them destined criminals. Just a few hours ago, Se interviewed a woman who was actually grateful to number. She witnessed the 37th murder, claiming the serial killer actually saved her and her family from a monster. Official files say the victim was her ex-boyfriend, but the woman explains he was a violent psychopath who regularly broke into her home to abuse her. Se initially found that entire situation incredibly dangerous, completely unable to comprehend why this survivor genuinely felt saved by a notorious and highly dangerous serial killer. But the woman just laughed it off, completely confident that the serial killer would never target her. Staring at her attackers now, Se finally realizes exactly who this man saves and who he puts down. Facing the two thugs, the killer declares them destined criminals as he slowly steps forward. Yoon's partner panics, screaming at him to stay back. He swings a bar, gets disarmed instantly, and takes a brutal punch to the gut. Seeing this, a sweating Yoon realizes he is up next. The killer looks down at the criminal because his floating number is just a 1. That means he is not the target, which is the exact same thing Se heard in her interviews. But Yoon? His head is rocking a big fat 4. Pointing his blade, our killer calmly declares that this blonde guy is officially on the hit list and needs to go. He charges at Yoon, who is still processing this nightmare. Suddenly, random floating digits start flashing in his vision like a broken video game. Knives come out, but Yoon gets disarmed and beaten to a pulp in seconds. His buddy tries to jump in for a classic 2 versus 1, but the killer easily handles them both. Watching the beatdown, Se remembers the legends. No pattern, no clues, and 0 ways for the cops to catch him. Witnesses always claimed it was like this crazy guy could actually see the future. One witness even mentioned her murdered ex had shown up with a suspicious bag. When the police finally opened it, the thing was packed to the brim with flammable fuel. An absolute psycho was going to burn her entire family alive. If our killer had not shown up that night to take him out, a whole household would have gone up in ashes. Back to reality. Yoon tries pointing a knife from the dirt. Big mistake. The killer just boots him right in the face, smashing it into the pavement. Se watches in awe, wondering if this guy possesses some insane supernatural vision. Could this guy actually be predicting the future? What if he identifies future murderers before they can even strike, reading their exact victim count like a twisted scoreboard? The killer pulls out his voice recorder. He calmly logs the date, time, target number, and name. By ending this target, he is actively saving 4 innocent lives. But being a polite serial killer, he still asks the guy if he has any final wishes he can reasonably grant. Yoon just spits insults, completely oblivious to his impending doom. Our killer shrugs, guess those trash talk lines are going to be his final words on this earth. Yoon starts begging, but the window for mercy has closed. Meanwhile, his buddy decides this is the perfect time to make a run for it, dragging himself into the shadows. The killer carves the number 4 right into the guy's hand. Se asks if he is going to chase the runaway buddy, but he claims anyone with a number 1 is safe. Killing a 1 means trading one life for another, no net gain. The young reporter starts processing this dark math, and honestly, his twisted logic is actually starting to make sense to her. So, she straight up offers to team up with him. She has dreamed of identifying future killers and stopping them before they could hurt anyone for a long time. With her media connections, she can hide him and broadcast his message to the masses. Having an inside ally with the same goal is a massive level up for his crusade. The man pulls off his mask, asking if she truly believes that. He says he hates wasting time talking, pulls out his voice recorder, and asks for her final wishes. Talk about a bad first date. Se is completely stunned. Why is he targeting her? Well, looking at her head, the killer sees a giant 12 glowing. To him, a life is a life, no matter who it is, good or bad does not matter to him. All he knows is that putting some people in the ground makes the world a better place. He just hunts down any big number he finds. His goal is simple: maximize lives saved and never hesitate to pull the trigger. Meanwhile, TV news reports show copycat killers are popping up everywhere like mushrooms. A waitress watches the news covering the deaths of Se and Yoon, featuring crazy details leaked by Yoon's runaway accomplice. A customer yells for service, snapping her back to reality. But check out the guy in the background. It is our serial killer, chilling, drinking coffee, and taking notes. He times his menu orders perfectly so they arrive exactly when he wants. Even his seat is strategic, giving him a perfect, unobstructed view of everyone coming and going. From his window seat, he can easily scan the busy street below, reading the floating numbers of every single pedestrian. First up is a girl with a choker rocking a 2, and a guy near a government office carrying a 4. The waitress only has a 1. He sighs. Looks like his targets are running thin around here. His main rule? Go after the high numbers first, especially the ones that are blinking. The waitress drops by his table, but he is already gone. Just some cash and a full coffee left behind. Meanwhile, at another restaurant, a rowdy gang is celebrating loudly. Their obnoxious yelling is ruining everyone's dinner. A brave waiter asks them to keep it down, but the main jerk responds by chucking a glass bottle at the wall, nearly blinding 2 nearby diners. Grabbing another bottle, the trashy guy asks if they are really causing a problem, completely intimidating the poor staff. Meanwhile, his tattooed buddy demands more alcohol. Back at their table, the gang is celebrating because this absolute menace just got released on parole. The parolee brags that his expensive lawyers were worth every penny. Still, he complains about having to pay off the victim's dad, as if the family should just be grateful for the cash. This guy feels zero guilt for drunk driving and tearing off a young girl's leg. He actually thinks money fixes everything, completely ignoring the fact that his gang had to threaten her family just to make them accept the settlement. They leave the bar, and his buddies laugh about him getting right back behind the wheel, joking that he should just avoid any annoying cops on the way. Completely wasted, he hits the gas, driving straight toward a crowded sidewalk. The guy is practically snoring at the wheel. Suddenly, our killer appears in the back seat, ordering him to turn the wheel immediately unless he wants to die right now. He swerves just in time, narrowly missing the crowd, and gets ordered to drive to a secluded spot. Right then, his floating number starts flashing, meaning his time is running out fast. If he lives, he will murder someone within 24 hours. The killer tells him to swap seats and asks for his final wishes. The countdown starts, but the parolee fights back to protect his throat. Because of the struggle, the car loses control, violently skidding across the empty road. Out of patience, our killer smashes his head against the steering wheel and stabs him. The car halts, and he whips out his recorder to log the date, time, and victim's number. The bleeding driver gasps, asking who sent him, but the killer just continues recording his audio log. The target's number was locked. The trashy driver tries a pathetic sneak attack with a blade, but gets shut down instantly with a final, fatal stab to the chest. The number finally vanishes into thin air. The next day, he heads back to the same cafe, locking eyes with that same waitress from yesterday. As she struggles up the stairs with heavy boxes, he makes a choice, remembering her low number. But suddenly, she loses her footing and starts tumbling backward down the steps. Right then, he sees her number flicker and change just before she almost tumbles down the stairs. He manages to catch her hand. Shaken by the near fall, she thanks him and asks if he is all right. An older coworker pops up telling June to be careful and making sure the guy is okay. But our hero is completely spaced out, totally fixated on why her number suddenly shifted. She looks like an ordinary girl, and he is positive her number was just 1 yesterday. So how on earth did it suddenly go up? He had checked 1,000 times and knew those numbers never change. From the bottom of the steps, she apologizes again, and he realizes her name is June. Later on, the older coworker tries helping June with some eye drops. The poor girl has been battling headaches, and now her right eye is giving her serious pain too. Her colleague shrugs it off as dry weather, or maybe just late-night screen time. Still, she hands over some drops, telling June to definitely go see a doctor soon. The two end up watching a news report about copycat crimes, but as soon as they mention the infamous serial killer Hancho Mo, June looks absolutely terrified. She quickly makes an excuse to leave, visibly shaken by the broadcast. Her coworkers gossip that she must be working another part-time gig. Honestly, at her age, she really should just be studying. Hurrying down the street, she tries to calm down and catch her breath. She rushes to her next job, but the moment she walks in, she gets slapped right across the face for being late. Her boss yells at her and a coworker. But no matter how brutal it gets, June tells herself she can take it. Pain is temporary. she just needs to make money and survive. Even with life treating her like trash, she forces a smile and keeps pushing. That is, until a customer suddenly calls out her full name, leaving her completely frozen. The guy chuckles and tells his friends they went to elementary school together. Instantly, horrible flashbacks of her old school desk covered in killer graffiti flood her mind. He loudly reveals to the whole table that she is the daughter of Hancho Mo, the notorious serial killer from 12 years ago. They all start laughing, mocking her for dropping out of school to end up working here. Panic sets in, and suddenly, glowing golden numbers start floating over their heads. Feeling sick to her stomach, June runs out of the tent. Her eye is throbbing again, and she feels completely broken. Up on a building, our number-reading guy watches her. He remembers her outfit from earlier, but what really haunts him is that terrifyingly high number of victims she is supposedly going to claim. It makes absolutely no sense, and he cannot help but wonder who June really is. Meanwhile, old news footage shows Hancho Mo swarmed by reporters, demanding to know his motives. Police try to push through the media frenzy, but the press keeps screaming for details. Back then, a tiny June watched the horror unfold on the living room television with her mom. Confused and scared, she asked her sobbing mother why Dad was on television. She was only 8 years old, while her mom was desperately on the phone, begging people to pay back the money they were owed. By age 9, she was in total denial, shut out from the cruel reality. When she turned 14, classmates trashed her desk with hateful graffiti, screaming that she had a murderer's blood in her veins. Angry parents even protested to the principal, claiming she would grow up to be a monster just like her dad. Back then, June tried to reach out to her best friend, only for the girl to march right up to her in a rage. Without understanding a thing, she got slapped across the face by the one friend she trusted. In the office, a teacher explains that the friend's brother was murdered 6 years ago, likely by Hancho Mo. The school assumed June knew about the tragedy because they were close, but she was way too young back then to understand. How could she have known? Her father vanished when she was 6, and she only saw his face again when he was dragged away in handcuffs on the evening news. The teacher tells her to watch her mouth and think of the victim's feelings, completely ignoring the fact that her own life has been absolute hell too. June just laughs in absolute disbelief. Is this seriously her fault? Is she the villain for having a killer as a father, or for trying to be friends with a victim's sister? But the teacher doubles down, saying she cannot expect grieving people to sympathize with her. He tells her she shouldn't get defensive every time she meets a victim's relative, before realizing how heartless that sounds and offering a weak apology. Shaking with pure rage, the only thing echoing in her mind is her father's name, a permanent curse she can never escape. Back in the present, she sits in a park as people stroll by. But June does not see a normal crowd. Above every single head, glowing golden numbers float. The vision makes her eye throb with pain, leaving her totally confused. She realized that if she squints her eyes, the numbers stand out, allowing her to lock onto them. Initially, she thought the 2 dots in the numbers meant it was a clock showing the time. But some digits are way too massive for hours, keeping the mystery completely unsolved. Maybe it is some weird medical condition, though she has no clue what. Suddenly, her childhood friend Min approaches, asking how she is doing. But to her, a guy like him would never understand. June had actually called him there, and Min wants to know why. He randomly hands her some hand cream, leaving her baffled, before casually reminding her that tomorrow is her birthday. Honestly, he assumed that is why she wanted to meet up. Min smiles, pointing out they have been best friends for over a decade, so they should celebrate. Then he notices her tears and panics, asking what is wrong. She sniffles, admitting she has no idea why she is suddenly being so dramatic, and softly thanks him for the sweet gift. Thinking back on her brutal week, June confesses that things have been incredibly rough. She tells him about bumping into her old classmate, which dragged up all those buried childhood nightmares, leaving her completely dizzy and sick to her stomach. She recalls how a gang of furious mothers protested at her school, arguing that even if the girl is innocent, being raised by a monster means she will inevitably choose a dark, easy path. From that moment on, June vowed to prove them wrong by becoming a happy, responsible, and perfectly normal person. She would never become a monster like her father. Min calls the whole thing ridiculous, telling her she should not carry that guilt because she is not a killer. But June feels society forced this mindset on her, and an innocent guy like him just does not get it. Standing up, Min insists they go have fun today so she can prove she is growing up happy. She cracks a smile, watching her friend aggressively debate between board games and internet cafes. In the end, they agree on a cozy game cafe. They hit karaoke, grab ice cream, and laugh like normal teenagers. But the joy instantly dies when June spots the number above Min's head dropping. He notices her sudden panic, but she plays it off. She claims everything is fine. Even so, he cannot shake the creepy feeling that they are being watched. And sure enough, Guys with cameras are lurking in the shadows behind them. Who are these creeps? And why are they tracking their every move? Flash forward to a few years later, and Jiun is all over the news with gossip reporters claiming she is living her best life. The leaked video ends, showing her heading into a district packed with clubs and bars. The viewers have no clue where the duo went next, but hey, they were just teens being teens. To make things even more twisted, the reporter notes the footage was filmed on November 17th. That was exactly the anniversary of her father's 13 victims, and now, she's the exact same age as his youngest victim. Some guy online complains that the world is completely unfair. How do some lose their daughters while others just get to live their lives? He acts like he is just being logical, saying sure, a serial killer's daughter deserves a normal dating life, but it is just a hilarious joke showing that God definitely does not exist. The video already has over 1 million views. Plenty of people agree with this trash, while others are just terrified that she might pass down her father's twisted genes. More trolls claim they were classmates of the victims, throwing absolute fit online. Meanwhile, Bach heads back to the house and spots a group of people stirring up trouble. Down on the street, cops are busy reprimanding some loud mouth. Online, a few commenters actually defend her, arguing she probably did not inherit her father's psychotic DNA, but others insist it is pure biology, you always end up just like your parents. Just then, Bach steps inside Ajimione's home, realizing it has been a really long time since his last visit. Back inside, Jian is scrolling through the hateful comment section, looking completely crushed. She quietly asks if he made sure to cover his face from the lurking paparazzi. If anyone catches him on camera, it is over the internet will instantly claim they are living together. Jian is just so tired of strangers acting like they know her. She is certain those old classmates followed her to take those pictures. Bach gently tells her to take a deep breath, insisting she shouldn't waste her energy on these brainless trolls. They will move on the moment the drama dies down anyway. Still, the comments about inheriting her father's bad karma sting, making her feel like she will never have a normal life. This kind of constant hate could push anyone over the edge. The second she tries to build a happy, healthy life, they will drag her right back down. She wonders what she is even fighting for, while putting on a fake smile every single day. Suddenly, her mother rushes in angry. People outside are actually throwing rocks at their window. Ajimione apologizes to Bach for the chaos outside and how stressed Jian is. She hates leaving her daughter alone like this, but she has to work the night shift. Bach reassures her that they are just busy studying for exams anyway. But as Ajimione warns him to stay indoors and call if anything goes wrong, Jian spots those strange numbers flashing above his head again. Terror washes over her as she stares at the grim countdown ticking down over Bach. Panicked, she desperately begs him not to take a single step outside the house. Later, Bach searches the kitchen but finds absolutely nothing for dinner. Noting the rock throwers outside seem to have cleared out, he tells Jian he is going to make a quick run to the convenience store. Seeing that she has drifted off to sleep, he slips out quietly, but the moment he steps outside, the angry mob corners him in the dark. They shove the door open, demanding to know if he is her boyfriend. These thugs even know his name, shoving a phone in Bach's face while filming his reaction. Bach warns them they are crossing a major line and threatens to call the cops, but they do not care. They aggressively force their way right into the apartment. A massive, hulking guy blocks the entrance so Bach cannot shut them out. With a deeply twisted look, the man explains his own sweet 18-year-old daughter was brutally murdered by Jian's psychotic father years ago. Bach pieces it all together. This grieving father is completely unhinged and out for blood. Pushing inside, the man demands to know where the girl is hiding. He seems almost thrilled to discover that the notorious serial killer actually left behind a daughter. He rants about his years of silent suffering before pulling out a heavy metal hammer for revenge. Bach tries to step in, placing a hand on his shoulder to stop him, but the maniac instantly swings and strikes Bach down. One of his accomplices warns him that using violence is going too far. Just then, Jian wakes up to the screaming as the vengeful father tells Bach to stay out of his way. With Bach lying motionless on the floor, the man promises to make her suffer just like he did. Suddenly, Jian notices her friend's countdown has dropped to just 1 minute. In this horrific moment, everything becomes painfully clear. She watches the clock tick away, knowing every single second brings Bach closer to his inevitable death. She realizes that to the world, she will only ever be a monster's child. These people do not care about justice, they just want a scapegoat to bleed, assuming she will turn out exactly like her father anyway. Pushed past her limit, Jian decides to give them the monster they are begging for. She snatches up a kitchen knife, fully prepared to put this madman in the ground. But before she can swing, the mysterious number killer suddenly appears and grabs her arm. Everyone freezes in sheer shock as the intruder asks Jian if those are her final words. Without waiting for a reply, he drives a blade right into her, muttering that she was indeed bound to become a killer. And worst of all, The entire attack is broadcasting live online. Thousands watch in absolute shock as the hammer-wielding father screams about eye for an eye justice. The viral livestream captures every single agonizing moment of the confrontation, right up until Jian grabs the kitchen knife. But the cold-blooded number killer is way ahead, quickly smashing the streaming phones to erase any evidence while tightly locking down her arm so she cannot fight back. He quietly wonders if Jian was born with her father's dark urges, or if the world's constant, toxic expectations simply forced her to become one. Either way, it is none of his business. He is just here to finish his job. As he wraps up his grim task, the remaining thugs can only stare at him in absolute terror. Seeing his blood-slicked blade, the terrified thugs scramble to make a run for it. One of them flees sobbing about his lost camera, while the vengeful father stands frozen, stunned that someone else actually struck her down. He lunges to finish the bleeding girl himself, but the number killer blocks him, warning that he will strike him down next. However, seeing only the number 1 above the father's head, he lets him flee. Gasping for air on the floor, Jean asks who this scarred stranger is. Realizing she is still breathing, the killer looks down at his blade, noting it must have been a bit dull. As the glowing digits still float above her head, she suddenly realizes this terrifying assassin can see the numbers too. With his eyes glowing a deep blue, he looks down and sees her massive countdown showing that she is destined to take 4,000 lives in the future, like some walking plague. Meanwhile, news reports play, stating the bizarre murder victims all had mysterious numbers branded on their skin. Right then, as her life flashes before her eyes, everything finally clicks for Jian. He realizes that somehow, in some dark future, she really was going to slaughter 4,000 people. And this mysterious, scarred killer exists solely to execute future monsters before they can start. As her vision begins to fade, she watches their final countdowns tick away. She only has 30 seconds left, while Bak has 50, shattering her heart because she cannot bear to lose him. With 20 seconds left on her clock, she desperately searches for any way to save her friend. The scarred assassin looms over her, calmly asking his signature question, any last words. Summoning her very last bit of strength, she asks why he let that violent maniac walk free after what he did to Bak. The quiet killer simply stares down, knowing she will not understand the rules. Amused by her bizarre curiosity at death's door, he gives her a rare answer. Under his absolute, unbending system, anyone marked with a single digit is strictly off limits. After all, a person's fate doesn't change because of a simple explanation. Having given this speech 1,000 times already, the masked man watches as Jian finally gets it and closes her eyes. Right as he tightens his grip on the knife, Jian starts to fade, slipping out of consciousness. But then, something absolutely bizarre happens that completely terrifies the masked man. Her number, which was sitting at a massive 4,000, starts fluctuating, dropping rapidly until it hits number 1, right as Jian is about to slip away completely. This weird drop triggers a memory for our masked hero. He recalls a mysterious woman telling him he is the only one who can pull this off. He has to finish the job unless he can prove these numbers can actually go down. But just then, a random guy seeking revenge sneaks up behind him with a massive hammer. Fortunately, our masked guy is absolute beast mode and blocks the strike easily. The attacker screams that only he gets to end Jian's life. Right then, the number above the attacker's head jumps to 2. He screams that this revenge is his only reason to live, and he's ready to take out our masked man, too. This leaves our masked guy completely stunned. The number actually increased out of nowhere. Reacting instantly, he disarms the crazy hammer guy and slams him hard onto the concrete. It reminds him of another rare case where someone's number actually went up. Shaking it off for now, he focuses on the present, especially since the attacker is scrambling back up to finish off the unconscious Jian. So, our guy does what he does best and sends the attacker straight to meet his maker in style. Pretty soon, the cops are racing to a scene with 2 bodies on the ground. He finds it fascinating that her number fell from 4,000 to 1 out of nowhere. Who even is this girl, and how is she the only one defying the system like this? With sirens wailing in the distance, he makes a split decision. He grabs Jian, tosses her into the back of his car, and speeds away before the cops arrive. He speeds off in his sketchy dark car. Jian lies in the back, totally out of it, until a sharp wave of pain jolts her awake. She looks around, utterly lost. Stumbling out of the car, she finds herself at some abandoned, run-down house. Her mind races back to just yesterday, when she was safe at home with her friend, Baek Min. Suddenly, the scar-faced man appears, and the terrifying memories of last night come rushing back. Our masked anti-hero seems surprised she's awake so soon. Terrified, she tries to bolt, but a rope catches her foot and trips her up. He tells her not to waste her energy and just head inside. While working on his gear, he calmly explains he won't hurt her, as long as she keeps her mouth shut. Jian has no choice but to sit tight in the car while he does some pretty sketchy prep work. She remembers seeing this creepy guy hanging around her diner. Connecting the dots, she realizes he's the infamous number criminal, the monster who hunts anyone with a number hovering above their head. She recalls him mentioning 4,000 victims and asks him if she was really destined to kill that many people. But he's a total stickler, immediately correcting her with the exact number of lives she was going to take. He explains that people with the number 1 are completely off limits. For some reason, hearing this makes her realize exactly how she can survive his deadly game. Like escaping death is just some easy little puzzle. On top of that, her friend Beckmin is only breathing because of her quick actions. Originally, the kid was supposed to die right alongside her, but somehow, she broke the rules of fate and forced her number down to a 1. That other guy was meant to survive and build a new life. But the second his number jumped to 2, he became the masked man's next target. That's when she realizes that if Beckmin is still alive, it means the killer completed his mission. He confirms he ended the guy's life, adding that Jian almost died before he stepped in. Curiously, she asks if that man's number also dropped right before his death, just like hers did. Our masked Punisher asks if she's seriously trying to blame him, since she was the one trying to kill the guy. He tells her that once a number is locked, nothing is supposed to change it. It doesn't matter if you get hurt, locked up, or blown to pieces. The numbers never change because fate always demands its full count, no matter what. Yet, somehow, she miraculously dropped her count. With a dark, heavy stare, he asks if she has any idea what her bizarre existence actually means to his mission. This has literally never happened in his entire career. He starts the engine, and when Jian asks where they are going, he admits he's just driving aimlessly. There is no way he can let her wander around free. He tells Jian she is free to run away and try to get her normal life back, but she will spend every single second looking over her shoulder. Good luck trying to prove your innocence when everyone thinks you're a monster's accomplice. Or, she could just give in and fulfill her bloody destiny like the universe wants. Jian completely panics, blocking out his terrifying words. She convinces herself she has to escape, begging him to at least drop her off at her house first. She even lies and says she'll stay with him. But she desperately needs some clothes, her stuff, and to see her mother. She's terrified, scrambling for any excuse to get away. Our masked guy knows it's a trap, but he surprisingly agrees and drives her home. Jian creeps toward her front door, hoping the crime scene is clear by now. He intentionally parks his ride in a blind spot with no street cameras, giving her exactly 30 minutes to grab her stuff and slip back out unnoticed. Ducking under the yellow police tape, Jian rushes inside. She frantically packs clothes and essentials, her mind racing as she plans to run in the opposite direction and lose this freak for good. But then reality hits. Where can she actually hide? Meanwhile, a shadow watches her through a creaking door. Outside, our number criminal knows that if she actually returns, she passes his test. If she tries to run, things are going to get ugly fast. And right on cue, a dark figure steps out of the shadows, clutching a broken glass bottle. The intruder lunges forward with a wild scream, raising the jagged glass to strike. Jian shrieks in absolute terror, only to realize the attacker is actually her best friend, Beckmin. He's utterly shocked to see Jian breathing. He drops his guard, explaining he only snuck back in to grab a backpack he left behind after the police cleared out. When he saw the front door unlocked, he panicked and grabbed the broken bottle, thinking those lunatics from last night had come back. He repeatedly apologizes for giving her a heart attack. Gently touching his bandaged face, Jian blames herself for his injuries. Beckmin turns bright red, feeling totally flustered as he quickly insists it is just a minor scratch. Desperate to change the subject, he asks where she's been hiding all this time, admitting he's just incredibly relieved she's safe after suddenly vanishing into thin air. The news is going wild with rumors, claiming she fled the scene because she is actually the killer's accomplice. Even a detective handed him a business card, begging him to call if he hears anything. Staring at her packed suitcase, Beckmin asks why she is leaving. Jian stays completely silent, quietly turning and heading straight for the exit. Beckmin begs her to tell him what is going on, his voice filled with sheer panic. He saw everything that happened last night. He was literally stabbed because of it. While recovering in the hospital, he watched the security footage over and over. He saw the exact moment that maniac attacked with a hammer, while she screamed at them to stop the violence. But right as Ji-hyun was about to strike the guy, the feed cut to black. Beck asks what happened next, and the detective just spins his yo-yo, explaining the phone got crushed and ended the stream right then. Meanwhile, the internet is already blaming the infamous numbers killer. Nobody knows if Ji-hyun is even alive, let alone where she is hiding, leaving way too many massive questions completely unanswered. Now that the broadcast is dead, the entire internet is pointing fingers and framing her as the villain. Since Beck is her friend, the detective wants him to talk her down because they still have zero leads on this serial killer. Under a single dim street lamp, Ji-hyun tells him she has to run before the cops arrive. Beck begs her to stop running and just tell him the truth about whether she actually killed that guy. He wants to believe she is innocent, but if she did nothing, why flee? Honestly, where can she even go? Ji-hyun remembers the killer warning her that if she left him, she would spend her entire life running, constantly trying to prove her innocence to a hostile world. But Beck promises she has nothing to prove to him. He knows she did not inherit her father's twisted, killer traits, so she needs to ignore the public and ignore the noise. He is absolutely sure she could never do something so terrible. But Ji-hyun snaps back, yelling that he is completely wrong because this is not about proving anything. It is not that simple. In that dark moment, she did not want to save Beck or stop the guy. She genuinely wanted to put him 6 feet under, and she was completely sane. Her mind was crystal clear. She had zero interest in protecting anyone, proving that maybe she really did inherit her father's dark destiny. Talk about some severe, genetically cursed daddy issues. Maybe that is why the masked killer can see the glowing numbers hovering above her head. Either way, she softly apologizes for being such a terrible best friend and turns to walk away. Beck is left standing there utterly heartbroken, begging her to come back. That is the price of falling for a highly problematic girl. Ji-hyun warns him not to waste his life on her, but Beck reveals his mother collapsed and is in the hospital, and he cannot break her heart again. This hits Ji-hyun like a truck, instantly reminding her of how her own mother broke down over her father. Tears streaming down her face, she admits this is just another reason she will end up like him. Even so, she begs to see her mother just one last time. Right after, she slips away and gets into Number's car. He grumbles that she is late, and he figured she had fled. Ji-hyun calls him master, asking if he can actually eliminate future criminals. Our edgy vigilante claims somebody has to do it, and he is the only one equipped. Ji-hyun asks if staying by his side means she will never have to take a life herself. The scarred vigilante tells her not to sweat it, because if her floating numbers start ticking up, he will gladly end her himself. Talk about comforting. Still, she feels strangely relaxed riding with this well-meaning lunatic. Meanwhile, the weird yo-yo detective slips inside her house. He confirms she is definitely still alive, but wonders why she is sneakily creeping around her own place like a ghost. He expects to get the security camera footage very soon. Just then, he grabs some photos of Ji-hyun at the diner and spots numbers floating above her head, his own eyes glowing a menacing red, matching the blue and yellow ones. Elsewhere, a girl in a dark hallway frantically dials emergency services, whispering her address and pleading for help. She whispers that some freak is standing right outside her door and begs them to hurry. The dispatcher promises a patrol car is on the way, but she keeps demanding why they cannot just arrest the lunatic right now. The operator tells her to stay calm, claiming the guy is probably just loitering and might not even be dangerous. For now, their hands are completely tied. They cannot lock someone up just because she is suspicious. Frustrated, she asks if they are literally waiting for her to get murdered before doing anything. Cut to 9 hours later, and our main duo is still cruising down the highway. They pull over to grab a quick bite and relax. She asks if he ever eats anything besides boring dry cereal, but Number completely ignores her, telling her to open the glove compartment. She just keeps pestering him though. Annoyed by her constant food questions, he admits he occasionally eats eggs and chicken, even if he hates the taste. For him, life is strictly about maintaining his rigid, daily routine, and nothing triggers him more than random variables messing with that schedule. It is November 24th, marking the 4th full day of her road trip with a literal serial killer. Though to be fair, she is basically just a passive passenger tagging along for the ride. Stepping out, Number warns her to stay hidden since the cops already know her face. He tells her that if he is not back within an hour, she is free to go. Ji-hyun just sighs, noting that his daily routine is incredibly predictable. He ducks into a dark alleyway, eventually blending into a quiet crowd to stalk his next victim. Ji-hyun suddenly remembers him doing the exact same thing back at the diner where she used to work. Fondly remembering her sweet coworkers makes her question if she is actually on the right path. Honestly, does she even know what path she is on anymore? Later that night, he suddenly reappears and startles her, changing out of clothes drenched in highly suspicious red stains. Ji-hyun looks completely disgusted, but Number casually claims he just put 2 killers to sleep before they could throw a bloody party. He had to put them in early coffins, even though he preferred not to use violence. Suddenly, a sharp pain shoots through Ji-hyun's head as a strange yellow beam flashes across her vision. A digital timer suddenly materializes right above Number's head, and the terrifying truth clicks. Those glowing yellow numbers show exactly how much time someone has left to live. Curiously, Number asks what she is staring at. Ji-hyun quickly plays dumb, acting like she has absolutely no idea what he means. Sure, there is no real reason to hide it, but the sudden vision completely freaked her out. Telling this guy the truth feels like a terrible idea. Meanwhile, Number gets lost in thought, remembering how he complained about his own weird eyes as a kid. He realizes she is starting to inherit the exact same curse. Another day flies by. He parks the car in yet another quiet alleyway, mentioning he needs to run a few errands and will be back in an hour or two. Left alone, her eye activates again, forcing her to see the countdown of everyone passing by. Two distinct numbers appear, with the digit on the right ticking down at completely different speeds. The units are totally different. A 1 and a 5 means someone has just 1 minute and 5 seconds left. That 3 and 31 she saw on Beck was actually 3 hours and 31 minutes. Scaling up, a 3 and a 2 meant 3 days and 2 hours. And if the numbers are even larger, they likely represent months or even decades of life. He tries to decipher the floating timers above a nearby family, noticing that a woman named Oi looks incredibly sick. Ji-hyun gets slightly annoyed, assuming Oi has not been eating properly while living all on her own. Honestly, the poor girl looks completely drained, which perfectly connects back to that scary intro scene. She is the exact same girl who was being hunted, whose stalker kept pounding on her door, daring her to call the cops so he could break in and finish her off. He kept yelling for her to see what happens when you mess with him. Freak threatened her entire family like some twisted cartoon villain. Now, Ji-hyun notices this whole family has an 8 and a 31 above their heads, meaning that Midnight Threat is about to become a brutal reality. Sure enough, a hooded figure is stalking through the crowd to deliver on his promise. But it is not going to be that easy. Number spots the guy, notices a giant 3 above his head, and whispers that he finally found him. Seeing that the family has the exact same countdown, Ji-hyun panics. She tries to make sense of the sudden chaos, watching in horror as the numbers on the right begin rapidly ticking down. Those aren't seconds. This countdown ends in 8 hours and 30 minutes. While the little girl begs her mom to visit the mall, Moji stands there completely lost. Even if she follows them, what real help can she actually offer? Still, she impulsively jumps out of the car and tails the family. Up on the roof, the serial killer watches Moji run, wondering if she's making a break for it. But then it clicks, she's chasing someone. Putting 2 and 2 together, he realizes she's actually after the family that the other creep is pursuing. Meanwhile, he keeps scanning for the guy with the number 3 above his head and finally spots him. At the same time, the family heads inside the mall to shop, while the mother, Annie, begins blocking a flood of spam texts. Her husband suggests reporting this relentless stalker to the police. It turns out the psycho posted her phone number in public spaces, baiting random strangers to spam her. He even made fake reservations and put her name down at funeral homes, forcing her to block everything. The father needs to figure out what this absolute lunatic actually wants with her, but she's totally paralyzed, just sitting there because she has no idea what to do. She'll wait until she can gather herself, but her main priority is keeping her little girl completely in the dark. Moji realizes she's dealing with a stalker, which means her whole family is in danger now. Ji-hyun feels this is deeply unfair, especially since their kid is still so incredibly young. Suddenly, the serial killer pops up like a total ninja, noting there are 3 targets, including a kid. The jump scare startles her, and this mysterious anti-hero asks what numbers she currently sees above their heads. There's really no point in hiding it anymore. She sees the numbers too, which is the sole reason she blindly followed this family here. She asks how he figured it out, and the numbered guy explains it was obvious from that eye pain she had earlier. Plus, she kept staring straight at the top of his head. He admits it felt off from the start. Even with the wild concept of afterlife doors, Moji accepted these bizarre numbers way too easily. She wonders if she should just confess everything, since keeping secrets is pointless now. Meanwhile, the mother chats with her daughter Minso. Right after that, they wrap up their shopping and head out of the mall. Moji hesitates to ask, fearing she'll draw too much attention. Instead, she spills the truth to the numbered serial killer, who finds it pretty fascinating that she can see people's remaining lifespans, even if she's still doubtful. She estimates this family has exactly 8 hours and 31 minutes left. By that logic, the whole household will pass over to the other side around 10 p.m. tonight. She mentions she overheard them talking about a stalker harassing the mother, thinking he might be behind this. The numbered man agrees it's absolutely him. When she asks how he can be so certain, our anti-hero points out that the stalker is watching them from the upper deck. And honestly, it is pure nightmare fuel. Plus, the number 3 on his head is no coincidence. It matches the family size perfectly. The moment she tries to run after them, the serial killer grabs her arm. She insists she needs to go down there and warn the entire family right now. She wants to warn them that their stalker is lurking on the top floor so they can call the cops. Despite his constant warnings, the numbered man grows irritated because she still doesn't understand how this works. Just then, someone bumps right into Annie, knocking her shopping bags all over the floor. She thanks the polite strangers helping her, but suddenly spots something that makes her scream in absolute terror. Her confused family tries to calm her hysterical screaming until she shakily points up toward the balcony, directly at the stalker watching them from above. She weeps, terrified of why he's tracking her even inside a crowded mall. The numbered guy dryly remarks that she got her wish, since the family clearly knows he's here. Right then, Moji gasps as the numbers above their heads suddenly shift, and things just got a whole lot more urgent, dropping down to 7 hours and 4 minutes. She recalls him saying these numbers are absolute. No matter what, their fate to be wiped out in 7 hours remains unchanged unless Jihan steps in and eliminates the lunatic. The guy points out that her ability to see exactly when someone's clock runs out is a massive advantage. Since their countdown hasn't frozen, their remaining lifespan is set in stone. There's no need to panic when they know they have 7 hours left. While he prepares, he tasks Moji with keeping eyes on the three. She needs to stay under the radar so the stalker doesn't get spooked. But then she remembers, how will they stay in touch, since he ripped out her phone's SIM card? He casually mentions he already slipped a tracker on her phone to follow her. Completely shocked, she asks if he is actually serious, finding his methods incredibly bizarre. He did warn her she was free to run, but never promised he would let her go that easily. Yet here she is, voluntarily sticking by his side, fully aware he never once forced her to help him. Jihan suddenly realizes she's actively aiding and abetting a literal serial killer. He shrugs it off, telling her that if she wants out, she should just speak up, since he prefers working alone over dealing with an obstacle. She can't believe it. The nightmare only ends when this stalker is dead. She wonders why her own countdown hasn't shifted despite everything they've done. Surely the stalker would be powerless if they just locked the doors and called the cops. But first off, the police rarely act until a crime is actually committed, rather than stopping it beforehand. Secondly, he can sense a twisted dedication from this stalker, like he has been meticulously mapping out this entire plan for a very long time. So, simply locking the front door won't stop this maniac. Hours flash by, and now only 1 hour and 15 minutes remain. Inside the apartment, the frustrated father complains to the police for leaving so soon. The officers explain they can only slap an ankle monitor on the guy once he actually shows his face. But since there's been no sign of him since the mall incident, they claim there is nothing to worry about. They advise the family to keep wearing the safety watches provided and urge everyone to stay locked inside the house as much as possible. Promising one final sweep before they head out, the cops leave. But as their squad car pulls away, a figure watches from the shadows of a metal grate. It's not the stalker, it's Moji. She lets out a sigh of relief as the police cruiser disappears. Tucked away in an empty, abandoned construction zone beneath the building, she recalls Jihan telling her that if she had any doubts, she should see the truth for herself. Since she is keeping watch on the top floor, she hopes she can prevent the crime from even happening. Naturally, she hates the grim idea of taking a human life, but as our anti-hero pointed out, the stalker has to go to save 3 innocent lives. Even if she can't pull the trigger, she must assist Jihan. With 39 minutes left, the stalker suddenly approaches the apartment building. Clutching a heavy toolbox, he creeps up the stairs and stops directly outside the neighbor's door. He pulls out thick adhesive tape and seals the door frame. While she watches in confusion, he covers the ventilation grates and quietly shatters the glass with a specialized tool, slipping inside the building's hallway like a silent shadow. Suddenly, the girl loses track of him. With only 26 minutes left on the clock, the mother inside the apartment detects a strange, heavy odor, like a dangerous gas leak. She's totally baffled. She distinctly remembers turning the kitchen stove off. Moji slips inside silently as the father wonders if a window was left open. She quickly spots the broken window, letting the fumes rush in. Rushing over, she discovers a massive gas cylinder rigged to make the whole place explode. But he hasn't left, he's just breached through another window. As Moji frantically claws at the gas hose, blood-curdling screams echo out. She quickly drags the hose out of the apartment while the girl screams her head off for someone to open the door. Inside, the terrified mother panics even more, remembering her father just got smacked by this absolute lunatic. Fully losing his mind, the guy grabs the daughter as a hostage, laughing maniacally about how it has been way too long since their last reunion. He screams at her for daring to run when he begged for mercy, reminding her of his threat to wipe out the whole family. If she keeps treating him like trash, things are about to get really ugly. But right in the middle of all this domestic madness, a sudden noise from above stops the psycho in his tracks. He was just about to strike the woman, but pauses when Moji's phone starts vibrating. It is a text message from the serial killer himself, telling her to report everything to the police. A SIM-less phone. It is a text message from a device with no SIM card. He immediately knows who sent it and what the killer meant earlier. Seizing the moment while the stalker is distracted, the brave mother tackles him to the ground, saving her daughter in the nick of time. The daughter bolts to call the police, but the second she flings the door open, Moji gets smacked squarely in the face by it. Inside, the stalker brutally drags the mother by her hair. Moji watches in absolute shock as the guy pulls out a massive blade. Just then, Our heroine leaps in and sprays self-defense gas right in the lunatic's face. The gas has everyone choking, including the attacker. Noticing that the glowing death timer above the woman's head is rapidly ticking down, Moji urges her to run. After all, they have exactly 12 minutes and 47 seconds left on the clock. Furious about an uninvited guest crashing his party, the stalker screams, asking why she is interfering. Then, the psycho realizes she must be the one tracking him. He sneers, asking what she plans to do next, and if she's going to call the cops on him too. It turns out this freak is indeed the daughter's ex-boyfriend. He laughs, boasting that their little tragedy will make a fantastic headline, so they might as well try to run because he simply does not care. Absolutely nothing is going to stop him now. By the time the sirens get close, everyone here will be dead anyway. As he charges the girl, Moji shoves him back. She bitterly wonders how many innocent victims must suffer from monsters like him and her own father. Making a split-second choice, she helps the daughter escape and stays behind alone. The psycho screams for the girl to return, but watch this, a real-life vigilante is standing right behind him. Our mysterious serial killer appears out of nowhere, delivers a terrifying jump scare, and instantly vanishes. Playing the ultimate shadow game, the killer keeps tormenting him from the darkness. The hallway lights flicker off and then snap back on. But before the stalker can convince himself he is just hallucinating, the serial killer lunges, slamming the maniac against the wall. He disarms the freak and examines the blade like he's preparing a nice cut of steak for the grill, demanding answers once the pain fades, and asking if he has any final words. But the stubborn stalker refuses to back down, lunging forward to reclaim his knife and attack. But our vigilante loves his shadow play too much, vanishing into thin air once more. Losing his grip on reality, the paranoid stalker turns and bolts toward his ex-girlfriend instead. Before he can touch her, the killer delivers a brutal dropkick to his spine, leaving Moji stunned. The vigilante then chucks a heavy gas cylinder right at him, dryly noting that none of this would hurt if he had just behaved. The stalker grovels on the floor in agony, desperately wondering who these freaks even are. Summoning his remaining strength, he grabs the heavy tank and charges blindly at Moji. Right before impact, her life flashes before her eyes. She never wanted to end up like her abusive father, and deep down, that might be the sole reason she teamed up with this serial killer. Ditching the tracked phone and running away would have been incredibly easy. She honestly wonders if she stayed out of sheer terror that the killer would hunt her down, or if she was searching for some dark answer only he could provide. But when the vigilante intercepts the blow and completely dismantles her attacker, the truth finally clicks. She wanted a twisted justification to cross the line, buying into his logic of killing monsters. Now watch closely, the killer slowly pulls off his mask and asks his signature question one last time. Did she actually believe this dark path could fix the future? Maybe she just desperately wanted a world where her loved ones would never have to suffer at the hands of violent monsters. Any last words? Our edgy anti-hero drops the ultimate question while the traumatized mother upstairs struggles to breathe, crying her eyes out. Moji gently pulls the trembling woman up and helps her stand. As she leans heavily on our heroine, she softly asks who they are. Moji supports her, reminding her that once the police finally arrive, she must never mention seeing them there, even if keeping that secret is far from easy. She also warns her not to explain what actually went down. Looking at her, the mother silently understands the dark nature of her saviors. Later, she returns to find her own father groaning on the couch, completely beaten up. As he whines in pain, Moji watches with absolute disgust. Luckily, the scarred stranger notes the injuries are not lethal and he will live. Of course, that only happened because the killer intervened. The defeated stalker is left writhing on the floor, in pure agony, fading fast. Moji realizes he is still alive, muttering that he would have succeeded if she had not ruined everything. The weak psycho glares up, asking if she has any idea who she just crossed. He insults her, calling her a terrible brat, and she casually asks what kind that makes her, though she is not actually curious. She honestly does not care about his tragic backstory. She has zero respect for the opinions of a monster who targets helpless kids. Bloody and beaten on the floor, the guy spits out a curse, claiming she knows absolutely nothing about his pain. Meanwhile, Moji warns the serial killer that the police are closing in, and they need to run. He calmly tells her to head out first, while he records the stalker's final confession, confident he can finish before sirens arrive. She sighs, asking if he is genuinely serious about this bizarre ritual of collecting confessions. The masked executioner replies that he would not bother doing it every single time if he were joking. Moji still cannot comprehend why he listens to the garbage spewed by these monsters. He bluntly tells her to wait outside if she is annoyed. So she heads up to the rooftop, watching the flashing red and blue lights swarm the street below. They are moving fast, and she just cannot wrap her head around his crazy obsession with confessions when they should be making a run for it before they get cornered. She dashes back inside to hurry him up, only to find he has already sent the trash to the afterlife. Confused, She spots a pile of heavy climbing ropes and harnesses laid out on the floor. The killer explains he prepared this gear beforehand, mapping out the building's layout to secure a clean getaway. If they walk out the front door, the police or security cameras will definitely catch them. His solution is a dramatic, superhero-style escape off the side of the skyscraper. While she respects his planning, she is definitely not thrilled about leaping into the open air. He quickly anchors the line to a pipe, secures the harness, and tells Moji to hold on for dear life. Terrified out of her mind, she realizes they have no other way out. They slide down the side of the building, his inner superhero fanboy guiding every highly calculated drop to ensure they completely bypass the building's security cameras. Timing their descent for the exact second a swarm of moths flutters in front of the lens, he drops with terrifying force. He lets his body slide down the rope at breakneck speed, leaving Moji clinging to him in absolute panic while he kicks off the wall to gain more momentum. Scaling down the sheer face of the building, they vanish into the night without leaving a trace. By morning, the police file reports of the crime, locking in the location and time. The cops quickly write this off as a standard stalker case. But the responding officer and his chief immediately notice the strange slash wounds and a mysterious number carved right into the victim's wrist. This bizarre clue links back to the infamous number serial killer. By the next morning, police cruisers pack the street as our special eye ability detective and his partner roll up. Knowing the number maniac has struck once again, he stares at the security feeds. Suddenly, his assistant cuts in, asking what on earth he's doing. Sunbae casually claims he's just cloud watching to guess their shapes. She hands over the local security footage anyway, admitting they did not have the manpower to sift through all of it. He then begs her to hide his beloved yo-yo before the boss spots it and blows a fuse, though she warns him to throw it away. Meanwhile, forensics and other officers scan the crime scene for clues. Unfortunately, they find absolutely nothing, because a sprayed fire extinguisher wiped all the fingerprints clean. They only have prints from the family victims and the stalker, who already left the building. Sunbae politely asks Detective Moon where the surviving family is staying. Moon mentions the father is currently hospitalized and the family is likely visiting, before sharing the hospital address with the red-eyed detective. Another cop snaps that Sunbae cannot just stroll into crime scenes whenever he feels like it while everyone else is working hard. He needs to take responsibility and stop tracking dirt over crucial evidence. He keeps his cool. Apologizing for the bad timing, he heads out with his assistant to check the footage. On his way out, he sarcastically tells the squad to have a great day at work. The remaining detectives complain that there is no point wasting energy on a guy who only gets in their way. One officer admits he actually seems like a decent guy, which totally annoys his partner. Meanwhile, Sunbae tells his own assistant that he gets why they hate him, he just wanted to make friends. Right then, he activates his red-eyed ability to analyze the footage. His partner asks if they should head to the hospital, but he declines. She eagerly snatches the tablet to take a closer look herself. Spotting a hooded figure who looks strangely familiar despite his hidden face, she realizes this is definitely the number killer entering the apartment complex at 10 o'clock at night. The real puzzle? No cameras caught him leaving. When asked how he escaped, his assistant guesses the roof. But wait. There is also a chance he slipped out through a lower floor's blind spot. But once they reach the roof and spot fresh marks on the pipes, the escape route becomes obvious. Still, he cannot figure out how the killer bypassed the fourth-floor security cameras while sliding down. He decides to take a much closer look at that exact timestamp and notices something highly unusual. A bunch of insects suddenly swarmed the camera lens. Right during the escape, a cluster of moths flew directly in front of the lens. Sunbae maps out the camera ranges, the blind spots, and where the witnesses looked when a bright flash flared as the power kicked back on. Absolute genius. The light-drawn moths completely blinded the camera for several crucial seconds. Piecing it all together, there is no way anyone could plan this unless they were the culprit themselves. This proves the killer always calculates the absolute safest, most efficient escape route that normal minds would never even think of. Or maybe he sees the future. His partner asks if his eye ability is just like Sunbae's. Later that night at the hospital, our detective sits down with the surviving girl, gently telling her to relax for a few simple questions. As he activates his eye ability, the numbers 2, 3, 1, 0, and 3 drift into view. She quietly claims she is doing fine. But right then, the floating number 3 above her head suddenly drops to 2. He warns her that she cannot hide any lies from him now and must speak the absolute truth. She softly agrees as he opens his case file. Tell me, how many times do you think a person lies in a single day? Most people average about 2 or 3 daily untruths. But depending on a person's actual job, some can easily lie up to 200 times a day. Whether it is just a bad habit, a quick escape from an awkward spot, or pure, toxic malice, the psychology behind lying is incredibly complex. In the end, simple statistics do not tell the whole story. But being able to physically see a person's future lie count is different. It lets you peer directly into their actual soul. Now, let's talk about the killer's physical build. He asks if the suspect was around 1 meter 80 tall. She nods in agreement, prompting him to assume she never got a look at his face. She confirms she did not see a thing. It was pitch black, and her memory is pretty foggy. Noting that her lie counter remains unchanged, he knows she is telling the truth. Next, he asks if the mysterious savior had already taken down her stalker, and if she knows the exact time. She figures it happened shortly after the blackout. He calculates that to be roughly 3 to 5 minutes, which she confirms, meaning the killer slipped inside the apartment when the power cut at 10 that night. If they adjust their theory and assume he timed his escape perfectly, using future sight right when the moths blocked the lenses, that would mark the exact moment he slipped out. Looking closely at her, he suggests the killer actually remained inside the apartment for a full 30 minutes. Since the stalker was taken down within 5 minutes, he presses her about the remaining 15 minutes of missing time. She nervously claims she has no idea, insisting she ran straight out to the hallway. Right on cue, her number drops. She lied. She quickly claims the killer had vanished when she returned, but Sunbae is absolutely positive she is lying. Her story about running into the hallway is a total sham in reality. She spent those mysterious 15 minutes inside the apartment with the killer. He knows she is hiding something from the police and needs to figure out why. Pivoting back to her stalker, he points out the portable rope ladder found in the gas lines, proving the stalker came heavily prepared. She shifts uncomfortably. Defensively, she asks what any of this has to do with the case. The detective explains he is merely trying to understand how the number maniac selects his targets, asking Yoon Se-on why she specifically was targeted by this stalker. If she has any inkling, she can share it, but she immediately shuts down, claiming it is far too traumatizing to discuss. Keeping steady eye contact, he realizes she is just refusing to answer, which does not trigger his lie detector. He could press harder, but he knows he will only face heavy resistance, so he pivots. He asks one final question. Does she recognize the girl in this photo? Her mind flashes back to that exact woman, telling her to pretend they never met once the police arrived. Still, she lies smoothly, claiming she only recognizes her from the news as the daughter of the notorious psychopath, Mo Hanel. Amazingly, she manages to beat his eye ability, because she technically only left out a crucial detail rather than telling an outright lie. The detective agrees, but casually mentions the girl's face was completely blurred in the news broadcast. Yoon Se-on scrambles to justify herself, claiming she saw a different report, and pleads with Sunbae to stop doubting an innocent victim who has no reason to lie. But he remembers the security footage. He saw the psychopath's daughter on those very stairs. It turns out, several survivors from these deadly encounters have one major thing in common: they all lived, thanks to the serial killer, leaving them subconsciously eager to protect his secrets, or maybe hide something from themselves. That is why he is going to ask her one more time, not about the news, but what she saw with her own eyes on the day of the incident. After this intense questioning, we cut to the Dajong police station where Sunbae pieces together his theories about the Sunlight apartment case and the numbered serial killer. But the chief just sighs, asking how long they will play this time-wasting game. Another detective chimes in, pointing out that back in Minden, there was a real chance the girl actually teamed up with the numbered killer. Sunbae remembers the woman lying through her teeth, smiling as she claimed she never saw the girl with him and insisting the guy was innocent. Even without hard evidence that Moji Dion teamed up with him, he completely gets it. No fingerprints, no DNA, absolutely nothing on the security cameras. To make matters worse, the detective himself wiped the security footage clean. Even the victim from Yoon Se-on's family kept quiet about Ji being there. This is despite being promised that if she just told the police everything, she would be completely safe. Although he is still tracking the girl from the Mdong case, he decides to make this arrest first and handle the numbered killer later. As they drive off, his partner asks if they are really doing the right thing. Sunbae is not worried at all because his private meeting with the woman gave him some solid answers. After all, keeping the girl hidden acts as a safety net, especially since the numbered killer can apparently predict the future. He doubts they can easily follow the trail because of the boy. Since they have not had a real conversation yet, Sunbae knows they cannot afford to let the local police get their hands on him first. They need to handle a few burning issues before giving chase. Meanwhile, the girl steps into the hospital room to see her father. The younger sibling immediately asks what the detective said, wondering if it was really the numbered killer, adding that they barely escaped with their lives. Fear still grips the little sister's heart because that pursuer had absolutely no motive. The older sister has no clue who he was, and the younger one desperately wants to know why he talked about begging for mercy. Their entire family was almost wiped out, gone, and nobody has any idea why that guy did it. Union reassures her little sister that the nightmare is finally over and they are safe now. She promises that their father did nothing wrong, and all that matters is they survived. Breaking down, they hold each other tight, crying tears of relief and promising never to speak of these terrifying things again. That pursuer became just another victim on the killer's long list, his final words recorded on tape. A dark memory flashes back to the numbered killer as a scarred boy in a room of blood. He stands among his screaming school friends, all helplessly watching a monstrous woman brutally take their lives. The woman coldly told him she did it because he was too weak to do it himself. She dared him to end her life if he hated it, calling the numbered killer her ultimate master. She claimed one last life before the memory fades away. The numbered killer snaps awake in his car with a splitting headache, looking back at the sleeping girl in the seat behind him and wondering why that old trauma resurfaced. He left so much behind. No regrets. He simply focuses on his next mission. As the girl stirs, he drives his black van into a quiet alley to handle some business. He meets up with a heavily tattooed woman who instantly recognizes him, teasing that he has been too famous to visit her lately. He hands over the voice recorders she requested, and in return, she slips him the contact information he wanted. Smirking, she asks if she should just deduct the standard fee for her services. The girl realizes these are the exact voice recorders he always carries. The tattooed woman notices her, commenting that she is quite a curiosity since she is the only person Number has ever spared. He tells her to ignore the woman and get back in the car. Once they are driving again, she asks him what those recorders actually contain. He tells her it is none of her business, but Moji Dion already knows they hold the final words of his targets. She demands to know who he is delivering them to. He explains that they are final messages from the deceased, words from people who wanted one last chance to speak to the ones they loved before their lives were cut short. Some use their final moments to instruct lawyers on dividing up their inheritance, while others use their last breath to spit curses. Curious, she asks why he even keeps these memos around. He explains that sometimes these audio files are the only evidence left behind. The final words and wills of the deceased are quietly linked to their loved ones, then handed to a broker who delivers them without leaving a trace. To Moji Dion, carrying evidence straight from a crime scene is incredibly risky. Wait, seriously? He calmly explains that anything connecting the audio to the police has been completely wiped. Still, Moji Dion cannot comprehend why he does this, yet here he is, risking his neck to deliver final messages. She reminds him they were nearly captured by cops last time, all for the sake of passing on the final words of a terrible person. In her eyes, he is just risking his life for no good reason. Instead of arguing, he decides to show her his side of things, gently placing a bouquet of blue flowers onto a quiet grave. When she asks who lies there, he admits he has no idea. The target's final wish was simply to have flowers left on his sister's grave. He adds that he once had his own reasons, though they do not matter anymore. He has simply chosen to fulfill the final desires of the targets he takes down. It does not matter what kind of people they were, as long as the request is within his power. Does that even apply to cold-blooded monsters? Moji Dion asks. But to this scarred, numbered killer, good and evil holds zero meaning. Since they are future threats he is putting in the ground, he chooses to honor their final requests. He made this promise to himself long ago, even though Moji Dion thinks the entire concept is completely absurd. She always assumed he was taking bad lives purely to protect innocent people. But now, she is left wondering if this man actually feels anything at all about the targets he puts down. He behaves like a cold machine, operating strictly on his own internal programming. She suspects some dark trauma in his past made him this way, but all she can do is guess what drives his endless crusade. Pulling up to his destination, he steps out onto a bustling street that feels like the entrance to a shady underworld. It is a deeply unsettling place. He reveals he is there to fulfill the dying wish of a previous target, executing a revenge the deceased could never finish. The target in the photo, marked with the number 34 above his head, is a heavily tattooed man currently watching a crowded nightclub. The man had begged the masked figure to take a life for him, prompting our anti-hero to ask who exactly needs to be put down. In a flashback, the tattooed thug breaks into a wealthy home, telling a man in a suit that he should have lived a better life. The weeping victim desperately kept begging Batman to do it, crying tears of absolute terror. That was when he exchanged his recorded message for the photo and file on the tattooed thug. This criminal is set to cause major trouble, just like the other 34 people on his list. That is why he stepped into this nightclub to hunt him down, honoring his target's final wish. Inside the VIP lounge, the tattooed target demands another expensive bottle of liquor from the server. He chats lazily, mentioning he has had plenty of rest this week. The broker responds that it will cost $7,000 per head, and they have 3 targets lined up. If he does not follow the deal, his family gets wiped out, and that threat is about to become reality. The tattooed thug mutters that he hates hurting civilians, prompting his associate to ask if he is actually feeling guilty. The tattooed guy grumbles about what a massive pain this is since things will stay chaotic for a while. Plus, he has to take care of business with his bare hands and cannot even frame it as some tragic accident. He wraps up by promising to get it done within 6 days. Outside the nightclub, our favorite anti-heroes watch him stroll past as he dials up his contact to ask where his next 3 targets are hiding. Moji asks if that guy is their target, and our masked protagonist nods. He remembers the guy having 34 hovering over him in the photo, but now it has dropped to 33. He explains that photo numbers only show the exact moment they were snapped, so they can totally change. If that tattooed thug had a 1 or 0, he would not even bother fulfilling his final wish. Oddly enough, the bad guy seems to sense Moji staring at him. Moji immediately ducks down in pure panic. Talk about a heart-stopping near miss with a scary Yakuza boss. He calmly tells her that since they have verified his number, they can head out. Then Moji asks if taking this man out was actually someone else's final wish. Was he just seeking revenge, only to have his fate sealed by a number? Wouldn't it have been better to let him go so he could settle his own score? If he had pulled off his revenge, 33 people would have been saved from their final doom. Still, he admits he has no clue if he would have even targeted this guy to settle a grudge. He might have targeted someone else entirely. That is why they had to verify everything before permanently canceling another human being. Just like before, they can use the numbers to predict exactly who will commit what crime. However, our masked friend thinks that doing that is completely pointless right now. As they walk away, he starts remembering his childhood, when a mysterious woman took all his friends. She could also see numbers and believe that taking a life was justified if they were already bad. She claimed it was different because those people were destined to become major criminals anyway. Back then, the young boy asked her how she could be so incredibly certain when she could not even see the numbers herself, regardless of who they went after. At the end of the day, they are still human beings, that is all those kids understood. He kept pressing her, demanding to know how she could be so sure of playing God. He looks at Moji and asks if she can honestly tell the difference between which numbers deserve to perish and which ones should be saved. He asks if she really knows how to judge whose life is precious and whose is utterly worthless, or who is good and bad just by staring at floating digits. Since that is impossible to define, he tells her she knows absolutely nothing, but with pure innocence, she asks if it is really that complicated. To her, a professional killer is obviously not doing the world any favors. She remembers growing up with adults constantly puffing away on cigarettes right in the middle of the street. She had no idea what they were smoking or the health risks, but she knew the smell was nasty. In her mind, weeding out the bad guys should be just as simple as that. However, our math-loving serial killer realizes she still does not get the point. He forces himself to stay calm because, well, she is just an uneducated kid. He does not need to waste his energy trying to sell her on his grand motives. At the end of the day, he just wants a straight yes or no. When she says it is a no-brainer to choose between 1 criminal and 33 innocent victims, he asks if she would pull the trigger on that guy to save them. Without missing a beat, Moji says she absolutely would, which is exactly the answer our mysterious emo boy wanted. He needs her to pull off a stunt that is currently way out of her league, so he decides it is time to train her to level up her magical, fate-reading eyes. He tracks down the club and scopes out the boss's hideout using security cameras. The lackeys keep a low profile, but this is definitely their main headquarters. He then turns to Moji and asks how much time the target has left to live. Activating her special eyes, she spots the numbers 14 and 9. She guesses it could be 14 hours and 9 minutes, or maybe 14 minutes and 9 seconds. Since the numbers are higher than 12, it could mean 14 months and 9 days, 14 years and 9 months, or even 14 days and 9 hours. Our protagonist bets on 14 years and 9 months, especially since the guy takes a new hit job every 2 weeks. Even if he delegates the dirty work, wiping out 33 people in 14 days is more than enough time. While he keeps tabs on the boss and waits for the perfect moment to take him out, he needs her to spy on the subordinates, snapping photos and videos of their faces. Oh, and she also has to track the number floating over each henchman's head. Moji is completely stressed about having to spy on a bunch of dangerous, fully grown men. He did warn her that this was way out of her comfort zone, which is exactly why he is going to train her to master those eyes. Eventually, he plans to teach her how to read these numbers like a pro, but since they are on a tight schedule, he whips out 2 handguns, one completely empty, and the other loaded with a live round. He demands she pick one, press it against her own skull, and pull the trigger. He asks if she wants the right gun or the left gun, leaving Moji asking if he is completely out of his mind. She is absolutely terrified because this dude is actually serious. He calmly explains that if she picks the empty gun, she lives, but if she picks the loaded one, her lifespan hits big fat 0. He is running this crazy test to force her to read the numbers of her own remaining lifespan. That way, she will know which gun is safe and which one is lethal, just like she reads people. Just focus on the countdown. Once she gets the hang of it, it is incredibly easy. She just needs to use a tiny bit of brain power and remember how she saw her own death timer on the day she almost died. He tells her to lock in on the numbers floating above her, instructing her to gently close her eyes and channel all her focus to the top of her head. She briefly spots a 9 and a 4, but panics and they vanish. She mutters that they look like they are floating in some kind of glass. Ignoring her weird description, our math-obsessed killer tells her to pick left or right. Moji panics and picks the left one, so he presses it right against her temple. Seeing her lifespan numbers rapidly counting down in seconds, she screams for him to stop because they are dropping, and yup, that gun was fully loaded. Moji asks if he was genuinely trying to murder her or just testing her abilities. He shrugs and says life is full of risks, but as long as she can read the numbers, finding the truth is easy. He advises her to use this survival trick for every single move she makes from now on. By doing this, she can dodge hidden traps and dangers before they even happen. She will be able to map out the perfect path to navigate safely. Snapping photos of those bad guys without getting caught will be a total breeze, even for a fragile schoolgirl like her. She still hasn't officially agreed to help, but just like before, she's secretly scheming to save innocent lives. However, she's terrified of messing up, getting in over her head, and turning into a total burden who ruins his solo operation. He brushes her doubts aside and asks why she is stressing so much. Even if she completely fumbles, his numbers will not budge. Absolutely nothing is going to stop him from taking out his targets like usual. He tells her to quit worrying since his master plans are not fragile enough to be ruined by a kid. Next thing we know, they are back on that crowded street, tracking the heavily tattooed thug with the scar. Right behind him is our mysterious dark knight of mathematics. His entire strategy relies on predicting the future using those floating digits, and now Moji is finally ready to use her own cheat code ability. He absolutely cannot let those numbers drop. If even one of them slips, it means he failed to take out a targeted killer, which also means failing to protect innocent bystanders. Countless civilian lives could have been saved. After everything he has been through, our anti-hero knows he cannot compromise on his twisted code of justice. He cannot afford even a tiny mistake, because a single slip-up means a death sentence for someone else. But right at that crucial moment, a cat knocks over a metal can, giving away his position. As the tattooed thug spots him and charges, the two dive headfirst into a brutal, high-stakes knife duel. After our guy slickly dodges a few deadly slashes, the tattooed thug mutters that he is actually pretty decent. Our emo hero asks who he is, and who on earth is coming after him now. The ultimate cosplay fan pulls off his mask to drop a truth bomb. This is officially the second time our gritty anti-hero is facing a deadly countdown. Out of nowhere, this heavily tattooed guy and his goons burst in, scaring everyone half to death. He orders his boys to violently kick everyone out and drag the manager to him. While they start beating up random customers, the thugs search for the manager with white hair. The entire squad goes on an absolute manhunt for the guy, convinced he is hiding nearby. They keep thrashing people until they finally spot a guy with white hair. The bruised manager desperately asks who they are and why they are doing this, but the Yakuza boss just gives him a free dental exam using a sharp knife. Shaking on the floor, the poor manager begs for his life. The tattooed boss thinks this is pretty amusing, jokingly asking if the guy is begging him or just pleading with the knife. The manager cries, but his time is up. He is quickly turned into a sad pile of ketchup. The serious Yakuza boss says he did a good job and asks who these people were, but to the suited guy, it is just another boring chore. Meanwhile, the clever little girl quietly snaps photos of 7 henchmen. She collects pics of these weirdos like she is catching Pokemon, figuring they have to go home eventually. Days have passed since she started working solo, but she still has not got to test her wild new superpower. Even though she tried taking the perfect route, her numbers still will not budge. She remembers his advice about taking risks to make those hidden numbers jump. Meanwhile, back at the fight, our serial killer hero and the Yakuza boss are trading brutal blows. They throw a chaotic flurry of strikes, but neither can land a real hit because their skills are insane. The tattooed thug knows he is dealing with a pro or maybe just Batman. The guy must be a master of sports, martial arts, and maybe even chess or poker. In any game of winners and losers, this dude knows exactly when to guard, when to strike, and where it hurts most. He scans the area for anything to weaponize. Should he slash, punch, dodge, or block? Every tiny detail matters when you are trying to stay alive against a beast like this. But something feels totally off. He is pretty sure he had the upper hand early on, but now, no matter how lightning fast he reacts, he is somehow doomed to stay one step behind his rival. Yet, the gap between their punches is somehow shrinking. It feels like this masked weirdo is predicting his every move now because, of course, our bootleg Batman is always prepared. He does not just dodge the tattooed guy, he moves before the attack even starts. Honestly, this is getting ridiculous. He has no idea the antihero has his Shuring and eye fully activated. The rule of the numbers is pretty simple. If his score climbs, he is doing great. But if it hits 0, he is totally dead. The only catch is that he processes everything like a literal robot. While ordinary people have to visually track the numbers on others, he does not even need to look at his own. The digits just flash in his mind. Every decision shapes a different path, and those numbers show his future. It takes our emo superhero less than a second to process all of this. The perfect path locks in when the number is set in stone. Right then, he connects a solid punch to the tattooed thug, leaving him bleeding before delivering a brutal kick to his chest. This is way beyond the mind of any normal person. But this bizarre number system actually works in practice the moment he slams the guy onto the concrete, knowing his name is Choi Chang-hyuk, number 33. Taking him down means saving 33 innocent lives. Suddenly, this budget Albert Einstein realizes he is dealing with the infamous number criminal. He starts laughing as his brain pieces together how this guy actually predicted the future. He says our guy is just like that creepy albino person, triggering instant traumatic war flashbacks for our poor protagonist. His face goes completely blank as the dark memories flood in. Meanwhile, the little girl runs from the tattooed thugs, but they easily corner her. They offer her a potato chip, teasing it will be Moji Hyun's last meal. Overwhelmed by his past, our hero grabs the Yakuza by his collar, demanding he repeat what he knows about the albino girl who can also see the numbers. The Yakuza guy flashes back to a bloody day when the albino girl was busy absolutely beating the life out of a gang. He lost his contract because she got there first and took out his targets. He asked her who she was and if she was working a hit too. She explained that those men were beating up kids on the street, so she took them out. She assumed he was one of them, before asking the weirdest question ever if he was one of the good guys. He tells our hero that their little crossover happened in China years ago, but he has no clue who she actually is. Seizing the moment while our hero is completely stunned, the Yakuza lands a dirty hit with a brick. Shoving him away, he says he would never talk anyway, but our hero immediately snaps back to focus, seeing the numbers shift. His eyes are burning from overuse, but he can see the man trying to make a run for it. He is still reeling from the shock of learning. His traumatic albino contact was active in China. He knows the fleeing boss is probably heading straight home or to his office. Meanwhile, in the getaway car, the bloody Yakuza wraps up his wounds. His men anxiously ask if he is okay and who did this. When he reveals it was the legendary number criminal, everyone panics. He quickly dials Junbei, the suited partner from earlier. He reports over the phone that they caught a little rat who has been creeping around and spying on their operation. He originally dismissed her as some random kid, until he remembered she is actually the daughter of that psychopath, Moon Cha, who vanished with the number. The boss starts laughing, loving how interesting things are getting. He warns them that the number is hunting him right now, commanding his goons to take their tactical positions and get ready for war. Our hero chases them, refusing to let his only solid lead on the albino girl slip away. The tattooed boss prepares a warm welcome for our serial killer friend, who quietly pulls up to their hideout. Slipping into the room, he spots the girl captured by Junbei, with the big boss grinning in a chair. He welcomes our hero, amused that he actually made it this far. He mocks that the kid must be super special since she is the only survivor he spared. He offers a simple deal: win the duel, and he gets to walk away with her alive. If he rejects the offer, the kid gets deleted. But in a hilarious twist, our hero says he does not care what happens to her, telling the boss to go ahead because he is doing him a favor anyway. The girl is completely heartbroken, and the villains are totally confused. But right on cue, a pack of thugs surrounds him. The Yakuza warns that fear will paralyze him, and his only hope is to fight his way out. The thugs mockingly remind him that no matter how strong he is, he only has 2 arms against a massive crowd. If they all land one hit, they will stab him at least 15 times. That is their deal with the boss. Our hero warns the boss to start jogging his memory because he has a ton of questions. Once he clears out this trash, the boss is going to spill absolutely everything. Meanwhile, the tattooed Yakuza boss barks orders to end the kid's life. But Mo Ji-hyun triggers her special eye ability, remembering his words about taking necessary risks. He had refused the boss's offer, claiming it would actually be doing him a huge favor. All of this gives the girl a massive urge to survive. She remembers how he promised to help her understand the difference in those weird numbers, guiding her to make choices that would keep her breathing longer. With his lessons ringing in her head, she desperately wonders what choice will keep her alive right now. Back in reality, the tattooed Yakuza boss demands they end Mo Ji-hyun's life. Ji-hyun panics when the protagonist points his gun right at her, looking like he's about to fire. Suddenly, her special eye kicks in again. She wonders if this was really the right call. The number above her head is huge, so she takes the bullet and falls backward, somehow surviving. He unleashes a barrage of gunfire, leaving the Yakuza boss wondering if he was actually bluffing. Right after, a thug slaps the gun right out of his hand. But our protagonist is always 3 steps ahead. instantly grabbing a sharp blade to slice through the boss's incoming goons. Suddenly, another thug snatches up the gun and aims it at our hero, firing a direct shot at his chest. But absolutely nothing happens to him. He barely even feels the impact of the bullet. The boss screams to shoot him again, but the tied-up girl grabs her chance and starts running for her life. Meanwhile, our protagonist goes full savage mode, ruthlessly tearing through the rest of the thugs. Boss spots Mo Ji-hyun escaping and barks at Jin to chase her down. Sweeping his eyes over the crowd, the protagonist counts 15 thugs left. Thank goodness his Kevlar vest covers him from neck to thigh, protecting all his vital areas. No matter what, those two are off limits for him to kill. But just as he is explaining his cool rule, the Yakuza boss ruins the moment and charges in. Our anti-hero blocks the hit and tries to counter, but misses as more thugs swarm in to back up their boss. Suddenly, the count of enemies rises to 16. These guys are a major headache. A few simple cuts won't make them back down or drop. They charge at him with absolute madness, leaving him with zero breathing room. While they block his path, the boss swoops in to catch him off guard. That familiar, blinding pain shoots through his eye from overusing his ability. Then, boom, a baseball bat cracks against his skull, flashing him back to the albino girl, telling him to just give up because he's too weak. Fueled by rage, he disarms a goon and puts him down. Counting under his breath, he notes that this is number 4, and calmly asks if the guy has any final wishes. Since the guy stays silent, he just ends him too while Mo Ji-hyun runs like the wind. Peeking through one of the doors, she notices her remaining lifetime isn't dropping. She realizes she has to take the middle door. The moment she slips inside, she spots something on the wall as her pursuer completely loses track of her. The air in this room seems to slowly drain her life, making her fear she chose a dead end. But 2 massive metal doors keep her lifetime up. Still, no matter what, her countdown won't go past 3 minutes. Trapped and cornered, she panics. But then, she remembers him telling her that her life number had dropped down to 1, right before she was almost killed. Against all odds, she altered her fate and lowered that number. She recalls how wild he went back then, proving her presence means something incredibly special to him. Just as these memories flood back, Jin steps into the room. The glasses-wearing thug tells her straight up that there's no way he can let her live. After all, this is what happens when kids play with dangerous adults. Plus, he smugly reminds her that she is the daughter of Korea's worst serial killer anyway. In a desperate move, she rips a hose off the wall and blasts him right in the face to stop his advance. She screams out that none of this nightmare would have happened if scum like him didn't exist. Suddenly, the thug spots an open fuse box right behind him, realizing her genius plan to electrocute him. A massive puddle pools on the floor, triggering a violent short circuit that instantly plunges the entire room into pitch darkness. Jin lets out a sigh of relief, glad he didn't get fried. But then it hits him for the very first time, this little girl didn't make a decision based entirely on numbers. She absolutely outsmarted him. Every step was calculated, and the protagonist smiles knowing she can survive. Meanwhile, the boss and Jin freak out as the lights die. The boss frantically orders his men to whip out their phone flashlights, but before they can blink, our killer uses the pitch-black shadows to sweep through the room, slaughtering the goons and ending the boss once and for all. This wild move allowed the numbers to fluctuate completely at his will, defying all proven logic. Yet, every time she tried to find answers to her burning questions, he always told her the exact same thing: those numbers never change unless someone is about to die. So she can't help but wonder why the numbers keep shifting every single second, almost as if they're alive. The rules of life should be set in stone, but they keep shifting the second she starts planning her next move. She recalls the serial killer's ridiculous parting words about her rewriting the numbers. It sounds totally insane, yet somehow incredibly simple. Honestly, if changing numbers keeps her off the execution block, she really shouldn't be overthinking this life-saving cheat code. But if rewriting fate is actually possible, our main character proves it immediately by absolutely demolishing a room full of bad guys. The lights go completely dark, but his special vision lets him lock onto targets and drop them instantly. Basically, he can predict the future through these numbers and intercept destiny itself. Talk about an overpowered superpower. Once again, he effortlessly clears the room in pitch-black darkness because the numbers are shifting to his will. All she could do was stall for precious seconds, buying just enough time to extend her own life and rewrite her future. These numbers basically act as a personal delete button for his enemies. He effortlessly rips through the mob boss's goons, picking them off one by one in the dark thanks to his crazy night vision cheat codes. Hearing his entire squad get sliced to pieces, the big boss realizes his turn is coming up very fast. He drops the boss, coldly suggesting they take it from the top. Pressing record on a tape, he states the man's name, Cho Chong-hook, and his victim count, which is 33. Gripping his bleeding neck, our hero explains that ending his life fulfills someone's wish. But hey, he's a generous guy, so he offers the boss a final wish of his own: promising to make it happen if it's within his power. He warns him that this is his absolute last chance to tell him everything he knows about the albino girl who also tracks numbers. The girl secretly listens in as the boss asks if his wish can simply be to stay alive. Our hero shuts that down immediately. If the boss lives, 33 innocent people are going to die. That's why he has to die, so normal people can live in peace. The boss just laughs hysterically, calling him the dumbest kid he's ever met. He explains that his syndicate won't stop just because their leader suddenly went quiet. If one blade breaks, another one easily takes its place. Our hero knows he can't break every blade, but he refuses to just sit back and watch innocents get slaughtered. Filled with absolute rage, he demands to know when the China incident happened and how the boss discovered the girl's power. The boss reveals she's currently in Korea. He tries to use our hero's anger to launch a sneak attack, but his knife gets slapped right out of his hand before he can even make a move. With his final breaths, the boss gasps that a massive war is coming between all these number-seeing freaks. He laughs, mockingly. If fighting one mob boss was this hard, our hero stands zero chance against the real monsters. The boss finally goes limp, leaving a heavy silence. Spotting the girl, he quietly tells her they need to go. Moji asks what they should do with the guy in glasses. Since his number is a flat 0, our main character says they can't touch him. Seeing his state, the girl asks if he's really doing okay. She proudly explains that she followed the numbers exactly like he taught her, even discovering a neat trick. But before she can elaborate, our protagonist completely collapses down the stairs. His brain has officially hit its absolute limit. Consciousness fading, he begins to slip deep into the recesses of his own mind, falling back into long-buried memories of his highly mysterious childhood. He remembers a classroom from back then. Excited to see a fresh face, the little albino girl ran up to ask his name. The young protagonist could only tell her that he didn't actually have one. This started 19 years ago, way before the numbers ruined his life. He tries to recall his very first memory, just opening his eyes and trying to figure out where he was. It's an ancient memory he's mostly forgotten. No matter how hard he racks his brain, a kind older lady rescued him from freezing to death on the streets, asking him to come with her. He still wonders if he actually took her hand. Somehow, he ended up finding a book hidden under a table. It was an old comic book about a mysterious vigilante hero. He read it instantly, totally unaware of how much it mirrored his actual future. Suddenly, the little albino girl popped up and asked if he liked the story. She whispered that she found a secret room filled with these comics, warning him never to tell the teachers, or they'd get in huge trouble. He pinky promised to keep the secret. When she asked for his age, he couldn't even remember how old he was back then, guessing he was somewhere between 5 and 6. Plus, she still had no idea what to call him. The school matron assured him that memory loss was pretty normal for young kids who survived bad trauma. The staff would eventually assign him a name like they did for everyone. The girl admits she's felt pretty weird ever since she got her own name at the orphanage. Since he'd likely be in class 1 on the first floor, while she lived on the second, she tells him he can just call her Nuna. He asks for her real name anyway, and she happily introduces herself as So-Ah. He asks if they can meet up again to read more. So-Ah agrees, on the condition that he stops talking to her so formally. Hidden deep beneath thick, overgrown mountain bushes, a quiet, isolated path wound upwards. Up there sat a secluded school housing, 27 kids and 4 teachers. The children were split between the first and second floors. The whole campus looked like a fairy tale retreat, completely cut off from the rest of the world. He spent his early years here, and the other boys eventually started calling him Da. A buddy eventually invites him to join the group for lunch while he's lost in his comic. It's now 16 years before the number incident. Time is skipping forward in his memories. Our main guy was busy studying a borrowed English dictionary. He wanted to read a specific foreign book, so he basically decided to teach himself a whole new language. His friend praises his smarts, remembering how he couldn't even read when he first showed up. Right then, a bully intentionally shoves him, sending his book flying. They demand an apology, but the jerk stays silent. His loyal friend demands the line cutter say sorry. The bully refuses to apologize, but our hero just shrugs it off, saying it's really no big deal. The bully then glares at the lunch girl, demanding soup. She stands her ground, refusing to serve him out of order since he cut the line. No cutting allowed, simple as that. Rules are rules. The teachers banned line cutters from eating. His friend thanks the girl for being so brave. He then stuffs his face on his buddy's advice to prep for gym class. They warn him to play safe and avoid injuries. But his memories are getting fuzzy. Sometimes the school looks clean, other times completely run down. He and his classmates undergo intense weapon training to build strength under the constant, watchful eyes of their heavily indoctrinating teachers. Everyone is pushed to the limit daily. Instructors kept driving them harder as our hero grew visibly stronger. They were literally training to be stealthy killers, fighting fiercely, and even sparring with live blades. Strictly forbidden from leaving school grounds, the kids engaged in brutal, no-holds-barred sparring matches. The instructors brainwashed them into believing outsiders were stupid, immature fools who could never comprehend their grand mission. They had to ignore the temptations of that ignorant outside world. Their teacher totally understood how painful their lives were before finding this place. Sure, everyone's trauma was different, but they all carried heavy scars. Sure, the suffering of these kids is not their fault. Between endless wars, deep poverty, and cold survival, the world is completely in ruins. Blinded by absolute greed, humanity does not even realize they are marching straight to destruction. And that is exactly why the legendary Mother Charlotte built this orphanage. While the children practice their combat shots, they are constantly brainwashed with the teachings of this holy goddess mother. This divine goddess mother promises that even if they give up on themselves, she will warmly embrace every single fool and guide them forward. Anyone standing in her way will be eliminated by her loyal apostles. All the kids with glowing eyes and weird traits are supposedly disciples with insane potential. They are destined to destroy the bad guys alongside their goddess mother and reshape the entire world. Maybe they can actually remain sweet kids with pure hearts. To make that happen, they simply need to listen to their weird teachers and hit the books as hard as possible. Finally, after all that bizarre preaching, lunchtime arrives, and the heavy atmosphere suddenly lifts, turning this cult-like place into a normal school. The teacher calls on the class reps to lead the greetings. After some brutal practice, one of Dom's buddies wraps up his bruised hand, casually calling it a standard training injury. Once the exhausting afternoon drills end, the boys finally get a single hour of sweet rest. Lights out hits at 10 sharp, and Daum remembers the night guard teacher stays wide awake. They lock down every single window and door so nobody can ever sneak out. With security cameras watching their every move, sneaking around this creepy place at night is basically a suicide mission. Honestly, none of these brainwashed kids would even dream of attempting a midnight escape. Whispering in the dark, the kids wonder if the teachers are actually telling the truth. Daum has major doubts, but the staff always claims that the more they study, the more their eyes will open. Besides, the actual layout of this place is nothing like the cool comic books he loves reading. His buddy teases that he has been acting super weird because of that cute girl on the second floor. Daum totally denies it, choosing to bury his red face in a comic about a hero fighting a pig boss. These classic stories of justice always play on Daum's mind. He cannot help but think of the teacher's promise that they will defeat real villains and help the goddess mother save the world. Suddenly, the stunning white-haired girl snatches the book right out of his hands. Before he can even ask what she is doing, the orphanage director pops in to grab her forgotten suitcase. Now Daum gets why Nuna quickly hid the comics and made them look like perfect students. The director simply tells them not to skip dinner for studying, looking quite pleased. Nuna gives him a playful scolding for almost getting them busted over some silly comic books. Another year flies by in this cage, and Daum hits 15 right before things get real. Once again, she is chewing him out for his total lack of focus. If they get caught slacking off, their chances of ever slipping outside will drop to 0. It is already insanely hard for her to steal supplies without getting caught. But when Daum begs to tag along on her next secret trip, Nuna actually agrees without much fuss. He just wants to know what brought on this sudden brave phase. Daum explains that he wants to explore the hidden books here and finally see things with his own eyes. He is dying to see what the real outside world looks like. Hearing his passionate speech, Nuna decides they should make their big escape this very day. After doing some quick mental math, she declares they are leaving tonight. Seeing his terrified look, she teases him for chicken out when this was literally his idea. Miss this chance, and they will have to wait 9 whole days for another shot. The boy gets the message and immediately prepares, stuffing a basketball and clothes under his blanket. He wakes up at exactly 2 in the morning to execute the plan. Nuna will head down first, and Daum just needs to slip out. One clumsy step and the night patrol teacher will lock him up for good. Daum still wonders how Nuna sneaks around so easily when everything is heavily locked. Spotting her gliding down the stairs, he frantically whispers that the patrol teacher is right nearby. He urges her to wait for a clear moment before moving, but Nuna just strolls right past the sleeping teacher without a single care. It turns out she spiked her tea, allowing the duo to slip outside into the cool night air. Looking back, Daum was absolutely stunned to see their teacher totally knocked out, while Nuna kept pushing him to move faster. Even though the staff locks every exit and bathroom window, they made a major slip-up. They locked the storage room door and completely forgot about its existence. Nuna secretly swapped out that lock with one she can open herself. Daum is totally baffled by her master locksmith skills, but she honestly cannot even remember how she pulled it off. She basically loots the teacher's office whenever they leave it unattended. She scored some great gear there, and even discovered a secret laboratory hiding in the dark basement. That basement lab is where she grabbed the sleeping drug. She ran some hilarious trial runs in the teacher's coffee, and the social studies teacher was by far her easiest target. This means they had to strike on her night duty under a full moon, which only happens on Mondays and Tuesdays. Messing this up meant waiting forever for another chance. Hearing this insane plan, the boy gets worried and asks if spiking her drink is really safe. Nuna playfully reassures him that after multiple tests, the teacher will wake up completely fine. She warns him to watch his step when they jump down because the drop is way deeper than it looks from up here. Reaching the courtyard, they freeze to avoid the scanning security cameras. Since the lenses constantly rotate, they have to time their run perfectly when the blind spots align. Dom asks if they should bolt while the cameras turn away, but Nuna tells him to hold. She starts listing the camera rotation patterns and exact timing like a literal genius. Honestly, it is a super nerdy explanation that we do not need to sit through. Long story short, they need to wait exactly 3 minutes for the perfect blind spot to appear. Our mind-blown protagonist asks just how many times she had to sneak out to map this whole pattern. She casually claims it was around 600 times, though she did not actually calculate it. She just sees the path. Wandering these halls since childhood, she felt the security was for her, but no amount of high-tech gear can tame her wild, adventurous spirit. They can try to block her, but she will always find a bypass, until they put actual guards to ruin her fun. Seeing Dom still sweating over their drug teacher, Nuna smiles warmly. Our young protagonist admits he was actually a bit freaked out by that sudden look of deep affection. The kids are constantly taught that everyone in this home is uniquely blessed by the goddess mother. They are told the outside world is pure evil, meaning they must never leave. But Nuna suddenly hugs him, whispering that, just as Dom said, doing this tonight is incredibly dangerous. If this chemical is really that toxic, she wonders why the adults left it lying around, especially inside a restricted basement where kids are strictly banned from entering. Nuna asks if he also sensed the dark secrets of this orphanage, sparking his desire to see the real world. She quietly wonders if hurting others is truly as wrong as they say. He thinks his favorite comic book hero isn't actually bad for beating up the villains. After all, those bad guys started it first, so it's totally fair game. The girl argues that the teachers locked them up first, justifying her own actions. If they are dealing with bad people, giving them a taste of their own medicine is totally fine. She then scrambles to her feet, realizing they only have 20 seconds left to cross the area. Pointing at a nearby tree, she tells him he has 10 seconds to bolt over there. She then asks Da if he knows about the elite honor class for kids with special talents, hidden right beyond classes 1 and 2. Next year, she plans to graduate from class 2 and secure her spot in that honor class. She adds that if he has the same hidden talent and meets the strict requirements, he can join her there. If he makes it, she promises to reveal her entire master plan with absolutely zero secrets. Little does she know, right at that very second, Da's weird numerical eye ability is already starting to wake up. Looking back, he thinks the madness started that day. His memory is pretty foggy, though maybe it was a bit later, or even long after everything had already gone completely down the drain. He can't point to the exact moment, but he knew he couldn't do much to stop it. While it seems super obvious now, back then he just shrugged it off as some weird trick of his eyes. He started seeing the numbers and understanding them a year after they first showed up, a full 14 years before the current incident. Suddenly, the school authority figure pops up to remind everyone it's already been 6 months since they entered class 2. Because of that, he is about to have his first counseling session in ages with the creepy science teacher. As the names are called out one by one, the kids nervously head into the room. First up is number 1, our main character's buddy Han Gol, who arrived at this place 7 years ago. He is a total overachiever, ranking near the top in academics, shooting, and combat training. The science teacher notes that he is by far the most motivated kid in his group. Han Gol admits he pushed himself this hard because he desperately wanted to feel special. His dream was to reach the honor class, graduate at the top, and serve the mother goddess herself. Now, he feels that without his teachers and peers, he never would have realized just how incredibly special and precious he really is. He would have been neglected and abused by his father, slowly losing any real purpose in life. Meanwhile, another girl gets scolded for lacking drive, even though it's already her 5th year here. She is top tier in almost everything, but the teacher asks if she is secretly too terrified to hurt others and punish evil for their mother goddess. The girl quickly denies it, claiming she just wants to study hard and make herself useful. She quietly admits that compared to the others, she is still pretty weak. Next is Kang Chang, currently in his 6th year. While his grades are absolutely terrible, he totally makes up for it in physical training. The teacher asks him if he's had any weird symptoms lately, like burning eyes or pounding headaches. While the science teacher checks for signs of eye-related premonition symptoms, Da speaks up. Currently, in his 6th year as well, our main character admits he actually experiences those exact headaches and burning eyes all the time. Da explains these feelings started a year ago, making the teacher wish he'd reported it sooner. The professor then asks if he has ever seen weird things like floating numbers. Right at that exact second, Da sees the number 11 hovering directly over the man's head. It instantly reminds him of what his friend said about talented kids getting fast-tracked to the elite honor class. She warned him that the requirements were brutal, meaning very few ever make the cut. While Da isn't entirely sure if it's a real number or just a shimmering heatwave, the professor eagerly updates his file, marking him down for premonition symptoms. Once the questioning is done, the teacher realizes Da is the last kid in line. He tells him to head back to the classroom and round up a few more students for examinations. He instructs Da to lead the rest of the students down to the basement science lab, muttering to himself that this year's harvest is looking pretty good. It turns out, all the previous kids were already taken down there. Even the top student has no clue this creepy underground corridor existed, and one of the girls instantly notices a foul, rotting smell. When the class bully asks which way to go, Da points them to the right. Walking down, he spots the number 2 hovering above the boys' heads, while the girl has a number 1. It's already been a year since these strange figures started appearing, and he still has no clue what they mean. By now, he can easily toggle the numbers on and off at will. The only reason he hid this weird ability from the school was because of the professor's deeply unsettling and alarming reaction earlier. He figured that mentioning he saw weird shapes would get him into the elite class. Sadly, he is about to realize far too late the horrific reality of what actually goes on down here. Standing in the lab, they find the science teacher next to a tied-up man completely drenched in red tomato sauce. The crazy teacher calmly explains that bad guys like this are always lurking, trying to steal what isn't theirs. Apparently, this guy was sneaking around the woods spying on their orphanage. This, the teacher claims, is why they must always be on high alert whenever they step outside the building. He slams a handgun onto the table and asks who wants to go first. The unhinged educator promises that the first kid brave enough to pull the trigger gets an immediate ticket into the elite honor class. He smiles, reminding them that at this point-blank range, it is impossible to miss. Grabbing the trembling girl by her shoulder, he decides that since she is clearly terrified, she should be the one to go first. He pushes her to do the unthinkable, reminding her that she once claimed she had the guts for it. He starts playing mind games, asking if all her talk about wanting to become stronger like her peers was just a lie. Like a classic anime psycho, he forces the shaking girl to aim the barrel right at the bound hostage. To speed things up, he suddenly points another gun directly at the bald bully's head, telling her to stop hesitating. He insists this is a necessary step to crush her fear and forge a stronger spirit. With a sickening grin, he gives her a brutal choice: commit cold-blooded murder right now, or watch her classmate die. As tears stream down her face, Da watches the number 1 suddenly flash above her head. But before she can break, the other boy suddenly snatches the gun right out of her trembling hands and takes aim. He fires a direct shot at the hooded, bound hostage, leaving Da completely traumatized for life. Right after the bullet lands, the number floating above the shooter's head instantly drops down to a cold one. The boy drops the smoking weapon to the floor, asking if this sick test is finally over. He reasons that since one candidate already succeeded, there is no need to keep going. But the crazy science teacher just bursts out laughing. He pulls back a nearby curtain to reveal 3 more tied-up spies they captured snooping around the facility. He gleefully explains that the early bird gets the worm, and anyone who shoots a spy gets an immediate pass to the elite class. Even if only 2 of the 3 captives survive, the deal still stands. It is basically a twisted horror game right out of a movie. He warns them that nobody is leaving this basement without earning their spot, and if anyone hesitates, he will gladly force their hand just like before. While this psychological torture plays out, the albino girl waits with a gun behind the door. Meanwhile, the teacher forces a trembling Da to grip a firearm and shoot at scuttling rats. Looking back, Da realizes this was never a real test, since their 4 promotions were already predetermined. It was pure brainwashing, forcing them to commit horrific acts and end lives just to break their minds into perfect obedience. It was all to lay a dark foundation, forcing Da to pull the trigger, or else his close friend would pay the ultimate price. Meanwhile, just outside the door, the albino girl waits to join the gruesome party. She only strolled by as a quick precaution because she knew the new recruits were arriving. Honestly, she thinks the teacher hasn't changed his twisted methods one bit. Even if things are moving ahead of schedule, she is confident everything will play out perfectly. With a chill expression and her weapon ready, she calmly steps right into the room. Listening closely to the rhythmic, heavy footsteps, she recognizes the guard. It is the helmet-wearing night watchman who patrols the halls, a man who somehow always seems to sense exactly where she is. He asks what class she is even from, already knowing she is the thief who swapped the training pistol for a fake. But she does not care. She just raises her gun, completely out of his shadow, aiming right at him. Instead, he cuts the lights and kills the power, darting past in the red emergency glow. She fires wildly in a panic. Bullets shatter the glass, and the nearby science teacher instantly realizes someone is inside. Her shots smash right through his helmet, but it was just a decoy. He is completely untouched, exposing his bare face as he draws his weapon to finish her. But right as he pulls the trigger, the science teacher swings the door open to investigate. She ducks for cover behind it, causing the man to accidentally fire tranquilizer darts that nearly impale the teacher. The teacher asks why he is running around helmetless. Brush off. The man spots a single white hair on the floor, shrugs it off as nothing, and asks how the new class promotion is going. The science teacher just smiles, saying everything is great and they just finished approvals. With the other kids traumatized for life, Dom can barely remember stumbling back to the dorm. Reality feels completely blurred, like a strange white film has settled over his entire vision. A week passes in total silence. Slowly, those creepy floating numbers above everyone's heads start vanishing. And then, the teacher announces that the 4 new elite honor students have finally arrived. They transfer to the elite room, joining 3 kids who were already waiting. 7 students in total, now forced to be classmates in this twisted program. Standing there is Nuna, the albino girl. Later, Daum wanders to the roof like a complete zombie, finding her waiting. She casually hands him the latest volume of his favorite comic book. It is a reward for making the cut. She brags about how hard it was to steal this copy, smiling as she notes it has been 6 years since they met. Now they can hang out every single day. But Daum is still deeply traumatized by the horrific sights from his exam. He collapses and starts throwing up. He gets annoyed with her cheerful vibe, but Nuna just helps him steady himself. She gently asks if he can see the numbers too. She knows he has a special power, because she sees them as well. Daum is stunned to find out he is not alone in this. She promises she will explain the whole mystery now that he is finally in the elite class. For her, the numbers reveal the future. When she looks at someone, she sees exactly how many lives they are destined to save. It is a true hero's vision. Then she drops a bomb. They can burn the orphanage down, slaughter the teachers, and escape. Just the 2 of them, playing superhero like the vigilante in his favorite Crow comic book. He is reeling, realizing her numbers are about rescue counts. She looks at him eagerly, asking how many lives they could save if they teamed up to do this. She asks what numbers Dom sees in his own eyes, but he gets angry, completely unable to process her twisted, delusional idea of being a savior. He demands to know how she even figured out her numbers. She ignores the question, surprised he still does not understand his own power, and urges him to think back carefully. She points out that those floating numbers had not shifted for an entire year. Yet, starting yesterday, they suddenly began counting down. Something triggered that sudden drop. He tries to think, but his eyes lock onto an impossibly massive number hovering right over her head. Shaken, he asks if she is truly serious about killing their teachers. She smiles, saying it is easy. Think about it. The facility wants children who are genuinely loyal. They do not just use raw physical force to brainwash them. At first, they play happy family, acting like loving teachers to build trust. Once the kids crave that sense of belonging, the staff forces them into crime, crushing their actual souls. That way, the kids can never think for themselves again. But these handlers are nothing special. Strip away their authority, and they are just ordinary, fragile people. Ordinary people who die just like anyone else if you slit their throats while they sleep. Daum is utterly horrified, but Nuna says her only real obstacle is the helmeted teacher. She cannot take him solo, so she did some digging. She has pinpointed the perfect date to strike. November 17th of next year, the single day that helmeted freak goes on vacation. Step 1. Slaughter the rest of the teachers and seize the facility. Step 2. Set a trap for the helmeted teacher when he rolls back from his break. Finally, hunt down the founder of this entire nightmare, Mother Goddess Charlotte. They will strip her of her power, her money, and her elite connections. Taking down the helmeted teacher and Charlotte is too much for one person, but since they met over comic books and both have insane supernatural eyes, she believes it is absolute destiny. She reaches out, inviting him to join her bloody crusade so they can play heroes. Yep, just your typical, totally healthy teenage romance. Dom sits on the floor in stunned silence. After a long pause, he asks if this was her real motive for pushing him into the elite class. Did she want him to see the horrific reality of the teachers and cross the line of taking a life so he would be ready to kill with her? Nuna laughs and says that was not her main goal. Being here is the only way to master his eye powers. The facility wants them to develop individual quirks, even if they do not expect much from the typical elite student. Daum asks if she also had to murder someone during her own promotion ceremony. He cannot shake the graphic methods of murder he just memorized. To him, this was just academic junk to get high marks and avoid getting beaten by the staff. He treated it as theory, never planning to use it. He figured the other edgy kids pretending to be rebels felt the same way. No one was actually planning to murder people. Nuna warns that if they keep playing pretend, they will just end up exactly like their abusers. But Dom declares he is escaping. He will not mess with her plan, but he is taking his friends and running away the first chance he gets. He hands the comic book back, admitting he can never be a hero like the Crow. He walks away, completely clueless that his future self will become that exact vigilante. Years later, looking back on this moment, he burns with rage at his younger self. He was so incredibly stupid and should have run right then. He should have killed Nuna right on that rooftop. That massive number over her head was a terrifying warning. It was not the lives she would save, but the lives she would take. He tortures himself for not questioning her plan. She wanted to destroy the facility, but she never said she would spare the innocent children trapped inside. She truly believed doing terrible things to bad people was normal, just like in his comics. Nuna could not comprehend why Dom was too weak to see it her way. Looking back, he knows he should have ended her. But the past is locked. Exactly 1 year later, the helmeted teacher packed his bags and left for vacation. The dreaded November 17th arrives. Nuna grabs her gun to launch the massacre. This is 12 years before the main story. And then, we flash to January 16th. Dom used the clever survival tricks Soa taught him when they were younger. Meticulously, he mapped out a secret escape route, filling in every single gap on the mountain path map. Things got incredibly awkward between him and Soa after their heavy talk. No fights, just a weird, suffocating silence. Then March 7th rolled around, the exact month his buddies got dismissed from their duties. Soon after, his two friends committed a couple more crimes, and their numbers instantly plummeted to 0. That was the exact moment Dom finally understood what those floating numbers actually meant. He was absolutely horrified by the massive body count Soa was planning to leave behind. He desperately tried to block out the fact that these were his own classmates' lives, forcing himself not to care just to survive. The clock was ticking. It was already July 28th. Getting his crew on board was an absolute nightmare. Yule became completely numb to everything, while the bald kid's temper flared up worse than ever. Dom couldn't explain it, but everyone around him seemed entirely broken in their own way. By October, with November looming close, he still had no idea if Soa's plan would even work. But as for him, his only goal was to sneak as many kids as possible out of that hellhole. He highly doubted he could get his 2 honor class buddies to join them. Meanwhile, back in the classroom, the teacher was busy evaluating Soa and Dom. The teacher warned the red-haired Haniel to watch out for the darkness lurking in the hallways. She then began detailing Dom's escape plan, calling him a weird kid with twisted logic. She brought up the bizarre entries in his diary, claiming they did not reflect his real feelings. The teacher told everyone not to worry, promising she would have a serious talk with Dom. She even asked the students to report any classmate acting weird, wanting Dom to bring them over to her side. But little did she know, Soa was listening to every single word through hidden bugs. Soa found it a real shame since that diary was her personal, secret read. Then, November 16th, 2012 arrived. The moment the helmeted teacher prepared to leave, she set her revenge in motion. This all went down 12 years before the infamous serial killer cases. During a frantic chase, a wounded teacher, gun in hand, desperately ran after the escaping girl. She fired wild shots at Soa, who dodged without even breaking a sweat. Soa mockingly asked what was wrong, telling the teacher she should have finished her when she had the chance. There was no way she could miss from that distance. The teacher screamed that she would never get away with this. Smiling coldly, Soa began lecturing her on proper shooting form, telling her to use both hands and pull the trigger slowly, like inserting a needle. With a loud bang, she put a bullet right into her teacher. Just like that, the woman's number count dropped, signaling her immediate demise. The science teacher admitted she was a quick study before opening fire on her himself. He proudly bragged about being the one who taught Soa how to handle weapons so incredibly well, but Soa quickly dove behind a door, carefully counting every single bullet he fired until his clip ran completely dry. The instant he paused to reload, she threw a white lab coat over his head to blind him, violently lunging at the long-haired teacher. She remembered promising Dom they would save countless lives together in the future. But to make that dream a reality, the corrupt teachers had to be eliminated first. Once again, the murder count ticked down as another teacher fell. Downstairs, Dom heard the gunshots, realizing the chaos had officially started, and urged his friend to jump out the bedroom window. Seconds later, Soa had her gun pointed directly at the chubby head teacher. But instead of begging, the teacher scoffed, calling her an arrogant brat who had always been out of line. The teacher admitted she only tolerated her little rebellions because she thought it would make her a useful tool. In the end, the girl betrayed her, completely ungrateful for the upbringing she was given. Soa laughed, telling her it was quite fitting that she refused to admit her sins even at death's door. She shouldn't act like some enlightened soul now. As a true villain, she should be screaming, crying, and begging for her pathetic life until the very end. Grinning, So welcomed this messy, beautiful chaos with open arms. Suddenly, a blade was pressed against her neck. A classmate dressed in black stepped in to stop her bloody crusade. The teacher smirked, apologizing that So wasn't the only one who could see the numbers this term. Yet another student emerged, aiming a gun and repeating that she wasn't special. Seeing her fellow honor students turning against her, So demanded to know why they were doing this when she was trying to save them. Girl with the blunt bangs laughed, telling her that nobody asked for her saving. They were so close to graduating at the very top and serving the sacred mother goddess. The teacher sighed, saying everything would have been perfect if So hadn't ruined it all. In her mind, So started thinking about her favorite superhero comic book where a crow hunts down the bad guys. She looked at their eyes and realized the truth. Every single student had been deeply brainwashed by the school. It was already far too late to save them. In her eyes, they were now just villains who needed to be eliminated. Without hesitation, she opened fire on the classmate she grew up with, leaving Dom and his friend utterly terrified as they scrambled to barricade their bedroom door. Dom checked the window, only to realize their escape route was completely blocked. Suddenly, his red-haired friend Haniel appeared, aiming a gun right at Dom. He yelled at him to back off, claiming So had played them all for fools. Meanwhile, in the comic book, villains began terrorizing the city. A worried bystander warned the superhero that the bad guys had fully seized control of the city, urging Claw to call for backup. But for the true hero, all that mattered was protecting the innocent. The hero delivered a cheesy line about being glad he wore his signature coat. Back in reality, a blood-soaked So muttered to herself, realizing she wasn't wearing a coat like her comic book idol. Right then, she spotted a coat hanging nearby and grinned. In her highly twisted mind, she was absolutely meant to wear that heroic outfit. She slipped the coat on and walked out, pondering what her official superhero name should be. Below her lay the fallen criminals from her story. At least, that is how she saw them, completely blind to the reality of who they were. Meanwhile, Dom and his friend were trapped with absolutely nowhere to run. The poor kid was completely lost, staring at the escape window that was now hopelessly blocked by a heavy pile of chairs. Haniel stepped up behind them, telling them to drop what they were doing and turn around slowly. He coldly repeated that both of them had been completely brainwashed by So. Confused and panicked, Dom demanded to know what was going on. Haniel, who knew exactly what was about to unfold today, had already told the other orphans to hide so they wouldn't get caught up in the escape. His entire plan was to let the teachers capture So. He urged Dom and Yule to abandon their escape and hide with the others. Hearing this, Yule suddenly remembered her own graduation and began to spiral into a panic. Seeing her break down, Dom begged Haniel to lower the gun. There was no need for violence, but the redhead firmly believed Yule needed to learn how to conquer her own deep-seated fears. She couldn't be coddled forever. Realizing Haniel was completely under the school's twisted brainwashing, our future serial killer slowly drew his hidden dagger. Determined to break free, Dom tried one last time to get through to his friend, pleading that Haniel must know something is seriously wrong with this school. But even while shaking, Haniel insisted the teachers were right. The teachers had no reason to lie, Haniel argued, sobbing. They just didn't work hard enough, he cried out, questioning that if this whole school was a massive lie, then what was the point of all their suffering? Over his 10 years here, he had already been forced to kill 2 people. Even if they managed to escape, what kind of life could they possibly have? Hearing his pain, Dom lowered his dagger, gently telling Haniel not to think about it, because they were still just children. It is actually the terrible adults who brainwash these kids who are really at fault and deserve to be blamed. Dom begs his buddy to run away together, but plot twist, the psycho girl Nuna breaks into the room. Everyone freezes in absolute horror. If she is already here, it means Haniel's master plan was a total flop. Nuna stares at the redhead, casually spoiling that he was the snitch who exposed Dom's secret plan to the teachers. Talk about a betrayal straight out of some cliché superhero comic book. See, these kids were raised by an evil mentor they took down 10 years ago. Isolated from humanity, they grew up with zero moral compass, not knowing right from wrong. Naturally, they grew up to be violent criminals, seeking petty revenge for their old boss. Nearly getting sliced, the partner admits he screwed up by not eliminating these orphans years ago when he had the chance. Back to Nuna, she casually tells Dom to stand back so she can save him. Our boy is just standing there in absolute shock. With a single, brutal shot, Nuna deletes the friend he desperately tried to protect. But she is not done yet. She aims to put an end to Yule too, just as Gang Chan shows up at the door, ready to fight. Even with the sneak attack, he stands zero chance against this wild girl. In her twisted mind, she expects everyone to throw her a parade, just like the heroes in her favorite comic books. In reality, Dom is absolutely horrified. There is not a single drop of gratitude in his traumatized eyes. Down the hall, other students are smashing padlocks to escape through the windows. Of course, Nuna spawns right behind them to clean house. Before she can pull the trigger, Daum tackles her to stop the massacre. Her stray shot shatters a window, sending a shower of sharp glass raining down. Daum screams in agony as the shards slice up his face. Surrounded by dead bodies of students who could not run, he desperately screams at Nuna, asking why. She just shrugs. If nobody else is going to do the dirty work, she has to. In her mind, these kids are destined to grow up and become evil criminals, just like in her comic books. Absolutely furious, Daum lunges at her, screaming why. Meanwhile, at the entrance, a dying student begs Mr. Helmet for help. The man glares toward the staircase, realizing things are going terribly wrong on the second floor. Up there, Daum and Nuna are facing off. Running completely out of ammo, Nuna drops her gun and whips out a knife just in time to block Daum's desperate strike. As they clash, he demands to know how she can possibly predict who these kids will grow up to be. After all, she does not possess his special eyes. But by snooping through his diary, she already knows Daum can see the exact murder count above everyone's head. She blames Daum for being a careless idiot, allowing Haniel to read his diary and betray him to the teachers. But his friend knew there was more to the story. Even after the betrayal, the redhead was trembling, completely torn about his choices. If Nuna had not pushed things, Haniel might have actually joined their side. Nuna easily disarms Daum, mockingly asking how he can be so sure these kids won't cause total chaos later. Does he honestly believe traumatized orphans, thrown into a completely new and alien world, would ever adapt like normal people? She is absolutely sure they won't, meaning they are destined to live on the dangerous margins of society and struggle in the dark. They would end up running with criminals, putting their deadly orphan skills to use and feeding a toxic cycle of violence. Our boy asks if she really slaughtered everyone just based on this insane logic. To her, there is nothing crazy about it, it is just cold reality. Completely unarmed, Daum charges at the pale girl, slamming her hard onto the floor. Pinning her down, he screams that she has no right to judge them. How could she know their future? Both Haniel and Yule had the number 0 above their heads, meaning they would never take another life. Nuna laughs it off, obviously. They won't kill anyone now because she took them out first. To her, it is a brilliantly simple solution. That big fat 0 above their heads was not their choice. It was because she preemptively canceled their future. Talk about a twisted cheat code. Smirking, she points out he could never guarantee they would actually become good citizens. Out of options, Daum snatches a dropped gun and aims it right at her. Secretly, she really wished they could have been a power couple. They both see the murder numbers, read the same comic books, and understand the harsh truth of this world. She just wanted them to match outfits and be together. But no, Daum rejected her romantic proposal of slaughtering the teachers. Even knowing she is slated to end 137 lives, he is too big of a coward to shoot, even when she drops her gun to give him a free shot. Nuna suddenly plunges a needle into his neck, mockingly whispering that he is far too weak to be a hero. He rises as Daum drops to the floor, totally paralyzed by the drug. Gun in hand, she casually greets Mr. Helmet, asking if he at least got to celebrate his daughter's birthday before coming back. This man is actually Honial Mo. With a grim expression, he asks if she is the one responsible for this slaughter. The psycho girl just smiles, and the two immediately start blasting. Sometime later, Daum wakes up in an empty, quiet room with a shattered dagger. He is the last one left alive. He stumbles through the quiet, bloody hallways until his knees buckle, and he drops to the floor. Suddenly, he hallucinates Haniel standing there, completely uninjured. The redhead smiles and asks if he is ready for lunch. In this hallucinated piece, the redhead casually asks about the novel Daum is holding. Daum mutters that he only grabbed it because the cover art looked cool. The book is about a runaway train with busted brakes speeding toward 5 people tied to the tracks. But someone could pull a lever to redirect it. Catch is, pulling the lever redirects the train to crush a single innocent person instead. He asks his friend what choice he would make. Haniel admits he would have no clue, asking what Daum would do. For Daum, sacrificing one person is better than letting 5 die. But after a chilling pause, the redhead asks if that is true. Then why did he not just kill Nuna to save everyone? The hallucination turns gory, as Haniel points out that Daum was the only one who could see those numbers. It was not just 5 lives on the tracks, but 137. Yet, he did absolutely nothing. Daum desperately screams that he had no clue Nuna was actually planning to massacre every single kid in the orphanage. Haniel sneers back, asking if he would have happily let her go if his own friends were spared, calling him selfish. Suddenly, Nuna appears behind him, saying he should have taken action on graduation day instead of freezing up. Daum runs in terror as her voice echoes, reminding him that to make a real choice, a life must always be sacrificed. If he had not run away from his problems, he would have known the correct move was to strike down the science teacher when his guard was down. Shivering at a table, Daum wonders how she can play God without even a hint of hesitation. He can't trust himself to make the right choice, But do the victims on the tracks even deserve to live? Will they actually make this world any better? He does not believe he has the divine authority to make those heavy calls. It makes absolutely zero sense. He recalls his teacher's lies about them being the chosen ones meant to fight evil. He remembers Nuna calling them all future criminals. Sobbing, he realizes that not a single one of them ever stopped to question those twisted beliefs. At the end of the day, they were all identical, believing they were righteous while labeling others as evil. They readily sacrificed lives, all to serve their own twisted version of justice. Maybe none of them were actually evil, but Daim admitted he finally saw the truth. He should have taken out Nuna before she slaughtered his friends, the only way to reach the real numbers floating above them. Could they change? Or were they born killers? Nuna challenged him, asking what he would do if the numbers proved they would never become good people. Did he have the courage to kill them? No, he was far too weak. But now, Daim swore to stop hesitating. No exceptions. He would discard his naive views of the world. Unlike them, he chose absolute neutrality. Every life held the exact same weight, not as a hero, but as a cold executioner of reason. With his decision finally made, he advanced on Nuna, fully prepared to slice her throat. Daim would prove those numbers were established by absolute, unyielding principles. If Nuna was actually still alive out there, he had one burning question before ending her. He wanted to know how many lives he would save in his lifetime. Only that answer could bring back the voices. Back in the present, he bolted upright in the car, dazed and drenched in cold sweat. Jiun-mo, startled while eating a snack beside him, jumped back as he urgently demanded to know where they were. Annoyed, Daim demanded to know who gave her permission to eat his hidden treats. But as he spoke, an agonizing, searing pain struck his brain, forcing him to collapse back onto the bed. Worried, the girl asked if he was all right, but he did not even have the strength to reply. The previous night, he had completed his mission, even though it almost cost him his life. Fleeing the scene, she mentioned keeping her eyes on her own floating number, just as requested. And with that, she noticed something highly unusual. But before she could explain, he collapsed on the stairs, falling directly towards her. Since he was incredibly heavy, she had no chance of holding his body up. After she desperately called out to him, Daim finally woke up looking absolutely deathly. Back in the vehicle, Jiun-mo recounted that when he first collapsed, tears of pure blood were streaming down his face. Besides ignoring her the entire drive, the moment they parked, he collapsed onto the bed and stayed there. Daim quietly explained that this happened because he had severely overused his eye. Whenever that happens, he blackouts and loses up to 3 days of memories. Panic-stricken by how long he was out, he demanded to know the day, learning that 2 days had already passed. It was already December 3rd. The news irritated him and he instantly sped off without saying where they were going. Seeing that Jiun-mo needed an explanation, he said they were heading far away to heal his eye. The fact that he cried blood meant his eye was already severely damaged beforehand. This meant he could not calculate the safest possible escape from the crime scene like he usually did. He could have left something behind, and trust me, in this game, even a tiny clue is enough for the police to trace them. It was a complete miracle they stayed so close to the scene for 2 days without getting caught. Jiun-mo recalled she had been terrified, watching their floating numbers during the escape. That did not matter to him, since she only saw people's lifespans, which would not drop just because someone got arrested. Frustrated, she asked why he even bothered training her if it was all for nothing. Annoyed, Daim was not trying to lay blame on her. The entire mess was his own fault. For 40 days straight, he had used his eye relentlessly to try and predict the absolute best future. He knew that soon he would trigger a catastrophic overload. Since she knew the terrible cost of overusing his power, the girl asked if he risked everything because of that silver-haired woman. Trying to remember the woman's name, she started saying variations of Nuna out loud, because she could not recall it properly. Instantly, Daim slammed on the brakes, sending her head cracking violently against the dashboard. He demanded to know how she discovered that woman's name. She confessed she was not trying to invade his privacy, but when he passed out, he kept desperately muttering that name the entire time. Even if she tried to ignore it, he kept mumbling her name. Embarrassed, he coldly ordered her to never speak of it again. With an awkward tension filling the car, Jiun-mo asked if he was furious with her, which he denied. The girl was not trying to provoke him, but she believed it was time he told her the truth about his past and what shaped him. Elsewhere, a police officer was conducting a tense interrogation, demanding the man in front of him stop lying. Just a little earlier, he had arrived at the station, accompanied by 2 other officers. The uniformed man introduced himself to Homicide as Director Han Gang. He brought along Samuel Guan from the Anti-Corruption Division, and a sharp woman identified as Lieutenant Jewel. Detective Park from Homicide did not understand how an anti-corruption guy was going to help them catch a notorious serial killer. He was handpicked by the director himself, who explained that the guy was exceptionally talented. Still, Park despised Samuel Guan's gaze from the start, even though he treated his colleagues well and sometimes slacked off. But during serious interrogations, Samuel Guan completely transformed. Park noticed that even while smiling, the man's eyes remained cold, brimming with absolute hatred. Flipping through his notebook, the officer remarked that the suspect had been incredibly cooperative and provided plenty of details. However, he still had a few critical questions left to ask. Only 3 people survived that bloody incident, including Junbong Go, who was now being interrogated. Since there were over 20 victims, there was no way Number could have done all that entirely alone. Hold on, look at that. As Junbong Go claimed he had no idea, glowing red digits appeared above his head, showing Samuel Guan also possessed those eyes. Rephrasing his words, the detective questioned how 18 of them became targets of the serial killer. Nearly all the victims were violent ex-convicts, many of whom were out on parole. In any case, the worse their crimes, the higher the chance they became targets. Displaying no emotion whatsoever, Go demanded to know exactly what the officer was trying to get at with these questions. According to Samuel Guan's research, whenever someone was assaulted or vanished at those clubs, several employees were questioned, with some even becoming prime suspects. Go worked for a security firm that had purchased 3 clubs from an acquaintance. All of this seemed to mask a much larger operation, and the officer questioned if it tied back to the Number incident. The interrogated man gravely stated he saw no connection to it. All accusations against his security company had been withdrawn. Meanwhile, his floating number decreased by 1. He provoked them, asking if the detective seriously believed they were harboring some secret gang. Once again, his floating number dropped by 1, and with his eyes glowing red, Samuel Guan demanded his phone. Go argued he already handed it over. But the interrogator knew that was not the device he actually used. From the observation room, Park pointed out that the guy's boss received a call from him immediately after the attack by Number. Even so, Go stubbornly insisted he had no secret secondary phone. Seeing the number drop yet again, Samuel Guan asked if his boss, Choi, always called that exact line. Go snapped back that they had zero proof and that he was there as a survivor, not a suspect. If they continued asking unrelated questions, he would plead the fifth until they could prove they had something concrete against him. The detective was not deterred, revealing that even without this case, they had more than enough dirt to investigate him. Annoyed, Go slammed his hand on the table, demanding they follow proper protocols. If they actually wanted to lock him up, they would have to go through his lawyer, who happened to be himself. Later, Jusiel hands her partner a hot coffee, complaining that these scumbags have been dodging serious charges for years. If they already bribed the local cops, then sending a backup team was just a waste of time. Honestly, Samuel was completely used to this corrupt system. Having cheat code powers barely changed anything. It was like playing a giant game of Mafia. Even if you point out the bad guy, getting anyone to believe you is almost impossible. His abilities only worked if he played by the rules and got the system on his side. But man, letting obvious criminals walk free was still incredibly frustrating. Once free, Go hangs out at the port, scheming over the phone about securing a crypto wallet. The guy on the other end is totally confused why he did not snitch on the girl. But this guy had zero interest in actual justice. He explains that some superpowered woman is already dealing with their boss. They are going to map out their revenge and execute it flawlessly. The cops had been doing a garbage job for over 2 months, so trusting them was out of the question. But suddenly, the line goes dead. Something went wrong. All of Go's allies have vanished, and his getaway ride is running pretty late. Suddenly, a shadow creeps up behind him, wrapping a wire tight around his neck. As Go gasps for air, Samuel casually echoes the criminal's complaint. The police are indeed totally useless, and he completely agrees with that assessment. Cops just whine about criminal rights instead of locking them away. So, Samuel decides to end Go's misery without any fancy weapons. He is going to take his sweet time with this, but a sudden wave crashes against the dock, giving Go just enough room to slash the wire. He swings his knife at the detective to back him off, then bolts into the night. Samuel picks up the dropped phone, muttering that his partner is going to kill him for letting the guy slip. Meanwhile, Go scrambles through the shipyard, hearing heavy footsteps closing in. How did this detective track him down so fast? Even worse, the hunter is not even rushing. Out of nowhere, Jusiel drops in, pinning Go to the ground before he can even process what hit him. She complains that if Samuel wants to go rogue and vent his rage, he should at least keep his eyes open so they do not run off. Samuel is not even worried, knowing she is always around to sweep up his messes. Go writhes in her absolute chokehold. How is this girl so insanely strong? Talk about a bad day to be a criminal. Maybe he will let him go. After all, everyone deserves a second chance, right? Even if Go's gang pulled off contract killings, crypto scams, and other horrific crimes, is he genuinely sorry? Desperate to survive, Go begs, promising to confess to every single crime. But wait, look at that. His floating death number just plummeted even lower. Samuel just sighs and nods at Jusiel to finish the job, completely ignoring Go's pathetic promises to apologize to his victims. Cut to a bit later, and some heavy metal drums are sinking into the deep ocean. Nothing to see here, folks. While watching the calm waves, the two partners casually argue about their favorite lollipop flavors. Still, Samuel cannot help but wonder about that mysterious woman Go mentioned. The answers are probably locked inside the criminal's phone. He admits he expected hiding June from the cops to be much tougher, but she played right into their hands. Still, Jusiel warns that their clock is ticking since Daeun left behind way too many clues. It seems he is struggling to calculate his next escape route. Now, the duo needs to hunt down Daeun and Jiun before the police do. Jusiel asks what the plan is once they corner the runaway pair. Samuel just gives his usual calm response. He will do what he always does. He is going to judge them, dissecting who they are and why they are teaming up. Most of all, he wants to uncover the secret criteria they use to decide who gets punished. First comes the interrogation, and if their logic is flawed, he will decide their fate right then and there. Miles away, Daeun admits he never expected anyone to truly understand how he picks his targets. He is not trying to play hero or serve street justice. The truth is, he just cannot trust anyone's judgment anymore, not even his own. How can anyone truly know who is good, who is bad, or who deserves to be spared? To him, every single life has equal value, and the future holds infinite paths. So he will choose whatever bloody road saves the absolute maximum number of people. After spilling his deepest secrets, he asks if June is finally satisfied. Meanwhile, back at headquarters, the detectives decide their very first target has to be June. A few days later, Joan leaves a convenience store loaded with clothes, water, and protein bars. Suddenly, a hand taps her shoulder, giving her a mini heart attack, just someone wanting to talk about God. Muttering a quick apology, the girl bolts down the street like a sprinter. She genuinely thought she had been exposed, which completely triggered her flight response. And yeah, running away like a cartoon character definitely made her look super suspicious. Ever since her face was partially shown on that live stream, the constant fear of being spotted has been eating her alive. Fortunately, she calms down a bit as crowds of strangers pass by without a second glance. It has been 2 weeks since the broadcast anyway, so people have probably already forgotten her face. Come to think of it, 2 weeks is also exactly how long she has known Daeun. He shared his entire dark history and twisted mission with her yesterday, but none of it feels real. She is still incredibly confused. It is just hard to believe such insane sci-fi things are happening in her own backyard. From what she gathered, this notorious serial killer is targeting Nuna for some personal payback, but Daeun clarified he is not fueled by revenge or some heroic duty to stop her. The math is simple. She has a massive death count hovering over her head, meaning she is destined to massacre crowds. If he starts playing favorites instead of treating everyone equally, he becomes just like her. June remembers that this mystery woman has the exact opposite power. She sees the number of lives people will save. He nods, though he admits there is a weird, unexplained contradiction there. Before they can dig deeper, the sharp wail of police sirens catches them both completely off guard. Luckily, the cruiser zooms past in the distance, but they cannot afford to relax. Daeun hands her a burner phone and a thick envelope, mentioning his injured eye is finally healing up. He can see the floating digits again, but nothing advanced. He will need another 2 or 3 days before his system can calculate the absolute safest escape route for them. Lying low is the smart move, but since they do not know what clues were left behind, the police could be hot on their trail right now. They need to wipe out every single trace and move somewhere far away as fast as possible. Daeun is going to prep their getaway car while she heads into town to grab everything on his list, especially some fresh clothes, a cap, and shoes to disguise her appearance. Strolling through the crowded streets, June stares at the remaining lifespans above everyone's heads. She ponders Daeun and Nuna's bizarre powers, weighing the classic moral dilemma of sacrificing 1 life to save 5. Even if the math adds up, it still feels deeply wrong. What if someone's massive death count is just because they are a soldier or a cop? Or what if they are only killing actual scumbags for revenge? For example, what if a vigilante kills psycho murderers to protect the innocent? Does treating those people like monsters actually make the world a better place? Or is it just flawed logic? Of course, this does not make Nuna a hero. In that woman's mind, there was absolutely no guarantee that those innocent orphans wouldn't grow up to become absolute monsters anyway. It might just feed a never-ending cycle of violence that hurts more innocent souls. Honestly, Nuna's grim perspective makes sense in a dark, twisted way. They just never had a good role model to guide them. Jiun suddenly caught herself thinking just like those judgmental moms who used to gossip about her when she was a kid. They always said she would never amount to anything with a father locked up behind bars and no role model to guide her. Recalling those harsh words now left her completely breathless as she looked back on her chaotic life. She pictured Dam, remembering how easily he talked about putting people down before they could hurt anyone else. He had even claimed that if his own friends ever grew up to be killers, he would end them without a second thought. And honestly, he felt zero regret for trying to off her too, focusing purely on the chilling fact that she was fated to cause the deaths of 43 and 26 people. Nearby on the sidewalk, a little kid pointed at Jiun and whispered to his mom that the girl looked super sick, prompting the concerned mother to ask if she was all right. Jiun insisted she was totally fine. But honestly, who would be okay after casual conversations about murder with Dam? She could not help but wonder if she really was cursed to end an insanely high number of lives. While resting at the bus stop, she glanced at the lifespans of the mother and child who had just approached her. Their numbers were ticking down at an alarming rate, and as she looked around, everyone else's time was dropping fast too. She jumped to her feet, struggling to process why so many random strangers were suddenly losing time together. When the bus pulled up, she watched in utter horror as every single person with a dropping lifespan boarded it. Her vision only allowed her to see 2 units of time at once, like days and hours split by a colon. It felt like she was back in school learning how to read a clock. She desperately needed to make sense of these shifting numbers so she could actually understand what each countdown meant. Seeing those lifespans drop minute by minute was absolutely gut-wrenching. She knew a horrific disaster was coming, though she noticed a few lucky passengers whose countdowns were not plunging quite as fast. Sure enough, those slow-counting passengers got off after a couple of stops. It was a bizarre cycle, people with barely any time left boarded, while those with plenty of life left stepped off. And this cycle would repeat for another 19 minutes until everyone on board met their doom. Suddenly, the little boy from earlier gently tugged her shirt and offered her a sweet, explaining that he always took medicine when sick, but to make up for the nasty medicine, his dad always treated him to his favorite sweets. Jiun offered the sweet boy a warm smile, reassuring him she was all right before asking if he loved strawberry candy, making him nod happily. It was downright heartbreaking to look at a sweet kid and know his life was about to end. Just then, Dam called her to check in. Panicking and completely out of options, she begged him for help, letting him know she was on a bus with only 17 minutes left on the clock. Judging by the route schedule, the major disaster was going to strike in exactly 5 stops. He wanted to know if she had any clues, but to her, it looked like a totally ordinary ride. She urged him to pinpoint the crash site while she figured out a way to force everyone to evacuate. To figure out the source of the crash, Dam told her to send him pictures of the driver and passengers so he could check their individual death tolls. Hearing him ask for the driver's picture made her realize that causing a traffic accident counted directly toward a person's kill tally. To Dam, this was a no-brainer. A speeding bus is just another weapon, and crashing it is no different than a stabbing. Still, she could not wrap her head around a tragic crash being classified as outright murder. But Dam coldly explained that intent did not matter if your actions caused a life to end. The system marked you as a killer. He added that if she genuinely wanted to save everyone on board, she had better hope the culprit was riding with them, because if this was caused by an earthquake, a building collapse, or a massive pileup, no single person would take the blame. In a natural disaster, nobody gets those deaths added to their profile, but if one specific individual was behind it, taking them out would miraculously save everyone else. Unfortunately, as she scanned the passengers' faces, none of them looked like they were capable of causing a massacre. June grew increasingly frantic, knowing that once a lifespan or kill count was set, it was set in stone. As Dam rushed over to the predicted crash site, she had to either Dam would intercept the culprit near the scene, or they would fail to track down the killer in time. The worst-case scenario was that it was a pure accident with no villain to stop. Terrified, she asked him what the actual odds were of their first plan succeeding. To him, calculating probabilities was a complete waste of time. They just had to act as if it was possible and do their best, meaning she needed to get those passengers off that bus immediately. He abruptly ended the call, leaving June thoroughly annoyed by his brutal pessimism. With more passengers boarding the bus, she had a mere 14 minutes to spark a full-scale evacuation. That was when she spotted a sleeping guy in front of her with a lighter sticking out of his pocket. She carefully snatched it and began pulling synthetic stuffing out of her brand-new jacket. If she could just generate enough thick smoke to trigger a massive panic, she could save them all. But even though the lighter had fuel, she desperately struggled to spark a flame. Just as she finally got a spark, the bus violently swerved around a corner, sending June flying and knocking the lighter from her grip. Luckily, a sweet old lady sitting ahead managed to retrieve it and reached out to return it. But before she could grab it, a car abruptly cut off the bus, forcing the driver to slam on the brakes. With nothing to hold on to, June went flying forward and smashed her face directly into a cold metal handrail. And to make matters worse, some passenger stepped right on the dropped lighter, shattering it completely in half. Dam's warning echoed in her head. She could try everything to save them, but fate might still win out. It honestly felt like some invisible, sinister force was intentionally sabotaging her every move. Meanwhile, Dam paced the streets, studying the passenger photos June had sent, while wondering what her next move would be. To his logical mind, the numbers on those screens were absolute and unchangeable. Refusing to back down, she snatched the emergency safety hammer, meant for smashing windows during crashes. But in another sick twist of fate, the tool somehow slipped from her fingers and tumbled straight out the window. Watching her stumble through the aisle, the annoyed bus driver shouted at June to hold on tight before she broke a bone. This was getting far too weird to be brushed off as bad luck. First, she gets a lighter only to have it crushed instantly. Then, when she grabs a heavy emergency tool to start a panic, it gets tossed out of the bus. It was like the universe itself was playing a cruel game. Every single desperate plan was being blocked by some unseen force. Was this the true horror of what Dam meant when he said that once fate is decided, there is no changing it? Right on cue, her phone buzzed with a call from Dam, who confirmed he had just finished scouting the entire crash zone. But just as he suspected, there was no obvious danger on the streets and zero killers lurking in the shadows. The surrounding buildings and roads were totally solid, ruling out any sudden structural collapses. A major collision seemed the most plausible outcome, though a rollover or random explosion could not be ruled out entirely. Once her bus drew closer to him, they could narrow down the possibilities. Regardless, he warned her not to get her hopes up about altering their grim fate. With only 12 minutes and 24 seconds left, June needed a miracle, and fast. If predetermined numbers were truly immutable, then any attempt to rewrite fate would be actively blocked. But that theory made no sense if that were true. Some force should have stopped Dam from hunting killers. Taking out killers before they strike drops their death tolls to zero, meaning Dam's entire existence was a massive contradiction to the rules of fate. How could Dam delete destined bad guys without fate throwing a tantrum? Jian remembers his lessons, like using her powers to sniff out which gun is loaded. Oh, and how he basically fried his special eye by abusing it non-stop for 40 straight days. Suddenly, she gets a light bulb moment and stands right up. Time's ticking, though she only has 11 minutes and 9 seconds left to pull this off. She taps a fire extinguisher near the door and checks her clock. Inside this bus, her lifespan is a measly 10 minutes. But if she steps outside, boom, her normal life expectancy of 30 years and 9 days comes right back. This little experiment teaches her two major things. First off, simply sitting inside this giant metal death trap guarantees she will be history in a matter of minutes. Second, unlike the boring fixed numbers on everyone else, her future is completely customizable. Jian quickly calculates that the bus is about to make a super sharp right turn in just a few seconds. Right on cue, the heavy fire extinguisher breaks loose and goes rolling down the aisle. Jian scrambles and quickly scoops it up before it can take anyone's ankles out. Realizing she can actually rewrite history, Jian starts connecting the dots. Whenever Dam eliminates a target, he uses his own lifespan numbers to calculate his moves. Sure, he's dodging the cops. But what if there's a much bigger reason behind his madness? What if he's using those numbers to rebel against a future that's already set in stone? Spurred by this crazy thought, she sprints to the driver, who immediately panics and demands to know what she's up to. Jian's master plan is to cause a preemptive minor crash before the fatal one happens. Just a tiny bumper-to-bumper incident that won't shave off a single day from any of the passengers' lives. She needs to boost her own lifespan without getting off the vehicle. If her clock goes up, she figures the countdowns for everyone else on board will get a nice little extension too. Thanks to her stunt, the driver loses control, and the bus swerves straight toward a utility pole. Meanwhile, high up on a building, Dam monitors the crowd's lifespans, which is seriously making his eye throb. Jian rings him up, and as he asks for an update, his gaze locks onto a suspicious character in the crowd below. Someone with a massive number is walking right into the zone. Dam runs to stop the incoming disaster while keeping her on the line. Jian is totally losing her mind though. Her little plan didn't work. It has been 4 minutes and 25 seconds since the bus hit that pole. Right on time, a police cruiser rolls up to investigate the scene. Luckily, her math was right. There are no major injuries, and the fender bender is minor. The officers start handling the situation right there. The cops interrogate the driver, who describes a girl in her 20s with brown hair and a green jacket. Fearing she is about to get busted, Jian slips away and does a super fast outfit change. She sneaked away before the smoke even cleared, so nobody would spot her. Jian lets out a huge sigh of relief. Her own clock is back to normal, and she actually saved those passengers. But here is the catch. Even though she tried to act smooth, the bus security cameras and about 100 pedestrians saw her face. Talk about a massive stealth fail. Still, she tries to convince herself that things will work out, but then she notices the evacuees. Since they are off the bus, they all have to completely scramble their travel plans. Even the driver just hands over his ID and is cleared to leave. Nearby, a couple mentions they should just grab the train instead, which will actually get them to their destination even faster. Turns out most of these people are headed to a concert and choose the subway. That is when Jian realizes something is terribly wrong. Every single person with a bleeding countdown is walking toward the exact same station. She bolts to the station to double-check, and yep, her eyes are not playing tricks on her. Every single person marked for death is heading to the exact same place. She calls Damn and panics. All those people were supposed to die on that bus. She is sure of it, because her own countdown cleared up the second she stepped off. She can hardly process what is going on. The looming disaster has just swapped shapes, morphing into a subway tragedy instead. That is why their death timers did not budge. Oblivious to this, the crowd cheerfully notes they will reach the concert even faster. Because the cops wrapped up the bus incident so fast, everyone got cleared out in minutes, and the crash happened right next to the subway entrance. This is way too much of a coincidence. It is like they are all following some twisted, unchangeable script, and Jian is absolutely terrified of where this script is going. Desperate, she asks Dam what to do. She really thought she could cheat fate by tracking her own numbers, but now all that confidence has completely evaporated. Can a regular human even break the cosmic laws governing time and space? Dam tries to talk her down from the ledge, saying he knows exactly how frustrating this feels. He has spent ages trying to cheat those timers too, desperately hoping to rewrite the future without having to eliminate those destined criminals. Jian is not wrong, though her self-awareness really is the key to changing things. Specifically, she does not get pushed around by fate's gravity when she focuses on her own number. The real headache is that destiny is like a rubber band, it always snaps back to its original shape. That means she has to use her window of self-awareness to make a permanent change. And here is the crucial part she needs to hear. This time, there is a very real culprit behind the upcoming disaster. An actual destined criminal is about to directly cause the deaths of all those commuters. He is walking into the station right now, and Jian is hot on his trail. Since Dam's eye is still recovering, he can't do it himself. It has to be her. She is the only one who can pull off this self-awareness miracle. Will she take his life to save the crowd, or keep her hands clean and let everyone die? The choice is entirely hers. This heavy dilemma triggers painful memories of her promise, never to become a monster like her father. She remembers how everyone looked at her, assuming she would turn out just as evil as him. Is that really the script they wrote for her? Screw that. In her memories, she swore to her friend she would never walk her dad's dark path. All she wanted was to be a normal, happy, and stable person. But when her friend was murdered and she almost lost control and killed the culprit, the townspeople immediately pointed fingers and said she was exactly like her old man. Her entire life was ruined by those self-righteous hypocrites who forced her out of school and plastered her tragedy all over the public eye. In her darkest moment, she wonders if she is simply doomed to be a murderer. But then her phone buzzes, it is Dam calling, snapping her right back to the freezing reality of the station. They only have 5 minutes before the disaster strikes. She has to make a choice right now. Will she hunt down the culprit, or stand by and watch a bloodbath? Jian is terrified she doesn't have the stomach for this. How is she supposed to take a human life with her own 2 hands? Right then, the train screeches to a halt at the next platform, and the suspect steps into car number 2. Dam confirms she is in car number 6, and tells her to meet up because he has to hand her a tool. He cannot bypass the suspect to reach her, nor can he get close enough to take the target out himself. That means she has to push through to car number 2 immediately. When she asks what he is giving her, Dam reveals he has got lethal injections ready to put the killer down permanently. All she has to do is slip close and inject the poison without anyone noticing. She desperately asks if there is any other way. But Dam knows that while saving everyone is the dream, in reality, it is completely impossible. Backed into a corner, she begins walking toward car number 2, watching the lifespans of the innocent commuters around her rapidly tick down. The bus only had about 17 passengers, but the potential victim count has jumped by at least 10. How is this guy going to pull off a mass murder? A bomb? Arson? Or maybe a chemical attack? Arson is the most likely culprit. It is always the classic trick. Honestly, no matter what twisted sob story drove him to this, in the end, he is just a monster about to erase dozens of innocent lives. Is it really so bad to delete a few trash humans from existence? Honestly, who would even miss them? But before we can debate the ethics of murder, the train violently jerks, spilling some very sketchy gear from the crazy lady's bag. Turns out she is packing a lighter, some literal garbage, and a whole bottle of gasoline. Talk about a disaster waiting to happen. To make things worse, some rude guy on his phone barks at her to move. He looks at her spilled junk and sneers, asking if she is some kind of beggar. Then, this grumpy fat guy actually starts kicking her stuff around like it is trash, but the second he snatches her stuffed animal, she goes ballistic, screaming and begging for the plushie back. Right on cue, the train pulls another violent jolt, face planting the crazy lady onto the floor. Instead of helping, the lovely passengers do what humanity does best. They pull out their phones to film and laugh while the grumpy fat guy keeps yelling at her. One look into the lady's eyes tells Jian everything. She is desperate enough to do the unthinkable. Dam senses something is way off and asks her what is wrong. But Jian does not explain. She just snatches the crazy lady's bag and books it. The crazy lady chases right after her, desperate to get her tools of doom back. Meanwhile, Dam has absolutely no idea why Jian is suddenly playing thief. Jian knows she needs to get back to Dam to grab her weapon. But honestly, even she is questioning her own life choices right now. For a brief moment, she saw her own reflection in that broken woman. She does not know her name or her tragic backstory, but she felt it, and that is exactly why she cannot just let her die like this. Is it really fair to end a life without even knowing what broke her enough to turn her into an arsonist? Over the comms, Dam screams that stealing a bag is not going to rewrite destiny. Sooner or later, she will have to make the hard choice, the innocent passengers or the killer. But Jian shoots back, asking if he is absolutely sure that the future is locked in. Ever since that horrific bus crash, something has been seriously bugging her. Think about it when the disaster shifted from the bus to this train. Jian checked everyone's remaining lifespan. The original bus passengers? Their doom timers started ticking down even faster. That means 10 extra lives got dragged into this nightmare the moment they stepped on board. Hearing this, Dam goes completely silent, totally stumped on how to argue back. To Jian, they still do not fully grasp how these death numbers work, meaning there has to be a loophole somewhere. So, she chooses option number 3. She is going to save literally everyone. Dam can hardly believe his ears. Did she ignore his entire speech? He has tried to break the system countless times, and every single time, reality slapped him back down. But Jian points out a simple fact: it was impossible back then because she was not there. Besides, Dam can only see how many people someone is destined to slaughter. This is a gamble only she can take since she is the only one who can see the actual count of victims. According to Dam, knowing the future lets you manipulate it, but the catch is brutal. The second she stops using her eyes, destiny snaps back like a rubber band. Last time, Dam saved a family of 3 by permanently deleting their destined killer. If she wants to pull this off without murder, she has to shatter the entire flow of fate itself. Jian realizes that up until now, Dam only managed to lower the death counts by taking out the threat. Nothing else worked for him because his vision was limited to the killer's direct tally, not the victims themselves. But Jian is built different. She can see both the victim count and exactly how much time they have left. So instead of ending the culprit to rescue the targets, she is going to protect the targets by stopping the crime from happening in the first place. If her theory holds, she can actually save both sides. To Dam, this sounds like pure, unadulterated madness. If changing fate was that simple, they would not be stressing right now. Jian is planning to spam her special ability right up until the passengers' countdowns completely run out. Right now, they have exactly 2 minutes and 1 second of life remaining. She has to keep holding the forces of destiny back with sheer, painful willpower. If she can keep them breathing past their expiration dates, she might just forge a brand new timeline, breaking their original doomed path once and for all. Dam is seriously worried, asking if she can even survive the agony of pushing her limits for this long. And honestly, it is brutal to watch her eyes look like they are literally on fire. The pain becomes too much to handle, and she collapses onto the floor, squeezing her eyes shut. A couple of concerned passengers rush over to Jian, asking if she is okay. The agony is pure torture, feeling exactly like hot shards of glass piercing directly into her retinas. Right then, Dam warns her over the line that if she slips up for even a microsecond, destiny will instantly drag them back to the grave. Glancing down at her backpack resting on the floor, Jian spots a mysterious liquid slowly seeping out from the bottom. The gasoline bottle inside has cracked and is actively leaking. Before she can even react, the helpful bystanders realize they have just stepped right into the highly flammable puddle. Jian looks back and pales as she sees a massive trail of fuel running all the way down the train car. Just then, the crazy lady catches up, demanding her bag. She wants her precious stuffed animal back and starts whining about how nobody ever listens to her. Tuning out the entire train, the absolute psychopath whips out a blowtorch and ignites it. Complete panic erupts as passengers realize they are standing in fuel. Everyone scrambles for the exit, but Jian knows she has to push through the blinding pain and force her eyes open once more. Seizing the chaotic moment, Dam fires a silent shot from the next car over. The bullet bounces off the metal, shattering the window directly above the crazy arsonist. Ducking from the falling glass, the lady drops the blowtorch onto the floor. While the crowd continues to stampede, Dam realizes that even with a clear shot, his supernatural limits prevent him from hitting her directly. He looks at Jian, thinking about her insane plan to save everyone. Despite knowing how impossible it is, a small part of him is actually praying for a miracle to happen. The truth is, they know absolutely nothing about this woman's story, and they do not even feel sorry for her. Bringing a lighter and gasoline onto a crowded train was a very deliberate choice. But what if she genuinely felt like she had zero options left? Maybe this is the only path you see when your entire future has been completely obliterated. Before the crazy lady can grab her stuff, Jian snatches the gasoline and dumps the rest of it all over herself. Neither Dam nor the criminal saw this absolute power move coming. Only 42 seconds remain. Jian refuses to turn her back on this woman's future. Forcing her eyes to focus, she scans the crowd and sees the sheer terror of people with absolutely nowhere left to run. If that gasoline ignites, it is game over for everyone on board. Darting through the screaming crowd, she frantically searches for a way to pull off the ultimate rescue. Not wanting her big moment ruined, the crazy lady grabs her blowtorch again and aims it right at Jian. But right then, the train bursts out of the dark tunnel, giving Jian the perfect opening to strike. With less than 10 seconds on the clock, Jian tackles the woman against the train doors. The persistent psycho ignites the torch once more, trying to turn Jian into a human barbecue. Desperate to block the flame, Jian slams her backpack right into the lady's hand, using the momentum to smash the window wide open. She knew the glass was already weakened from Dam's earlier bullet. The bag of flammable fuel flies out of the shattered window, plunging safely into the sea below. Catching her breath, she calls out to Dam, asking if he saw that awesome move. She actually did it. The future has officially been rewritten. As the train grinds to a safe halt and relieved passengers pour out, Dam quietly approaches and drapes his jacket over her shoulders. Dam tells June to hide her face and slip into the crowd because the place is crawling with cops. Looking at the passengers' lifespans, she's relieved to see they're all back to normal. June is absolutely thrilled. She actually saved all those people, and the best part is, she didn't have to kill a single person to do it. As things quiet down, Dam points out that she did the exact opposite of staying low, especially with cops everywhere. Not wanting to spoil her good mood, she just takes it as a compliment. She realizes that if a person's fate can shift, then maybe her own future murder count can be changed too. If there is any way to rewrite fate, she's going to do it. Excitingly, June tells him they don't have to make sacrifices anymore because they can save everyone. But Dam just stays completely silent. Before they head out, Dam tells her there is one last thing to check. They make their way back to the crime scene, which is swarming with cops. June has absolutely no clue why they came back, or what they are even searching for. Dam explains that by her logic, they don't need any sacrifices since she successfully saved 27 people. Instead of stopping what would actually kill them, she just dragged the victims past the exact moment they were destined to die, boosting their life expectancy and technically saving them. But then Dam asks a pretty chilling question. Did she actually go back to check the criminal's remaining lifespan after all that? Right ahead of them, police officers are walking the female criminal out of the station. But the exact moment she passes under a hanging sign, it snaps loose and crushes her head. June stares in absolute shock. This cannot be real. Even the officers can't believe their eyes because that heavy sign hit nobody but the criminal. June knows the woman's lifespan just hit 0. Panic takes over, and she charges toward the body, screaming for her not to die as she desperately tries to reach her. June trips and faceplants, suddenly remembering Dam's warning that she has no idea what is actually going on. Those deadly numbers are set in stone. The only way to make them vanish from above people's heads is to actually end the killer. While she's processing this, a cop reaches out to help and asks her to take off her beanie for an ID check. Instead of cooperating, June bolts out of the station. Hiding in an alley, she calls Dam and asks if he knew this would happen. He knew how this would end, yet he chose to stay completely quiet. Dam explains that back in the day, he tried getting the destined killers arrested so they would rot in prison. This was before he came back to Korea, but every time one got locked up, some hidden crime would surface, sending them straight to death row. And another criminal who was locked up, safe and sound in a cell, got an infected wound and died anyway. Eventually, he realized that no matter how hard he tried to save everyone, fate always found a way to collect its debt. He was forced to choose a side. This whole twisted game was way bigger than his powers or those floating numbers. From the second he walked out of that orphanage to this very moment, his entire life has just been one brutal choice after another. Dam learned the hard way that you cannot save everyone. Even when you think you won, you still end up losing someone. After all these years of trial and error, he knows the only real play is to save as many souls as possible. He admits he kept this ugly truth from her, but only because he wanted to spare her from that crushing despair. He actually hoped someone with a different power could break the cycle, but unfortunately, those numbers are absolutely set in stone. June still refuses to accept it. She asks through her tears if these killers are truly destined to murder no matter what, and if executing them is really the only way out. While she is shouting into the phone, someone creeps up behind her. Dam hears her go completely silent, replaced by dead static, and immediately knows things just went sideways. June is 1 second away from getting her throat slit by Samuel. Seeing her on the line, the detective asks who she's so worked up over and demands to know who's listening. Samuel orders June to call the person she was just talking to. From his creepy tone, she can tell this cop definitely knows something about the serial killer. Samuel tells June to dial Dan back, pretend she dropped her phone, and call once she calmed down. He barks at her to do exactly as he says, counting to 3 before she unmutes. The second the line connects, she calls out to Dan without using his name, and he instantly asks who is on the other end. Samuel realizes Dan is smart enough to use a voice changer. He asks if he is talking to the famous serial killer, and Dan, knowing his cover is blown, asks what he wants. Smiling casually, Samuel says he wants to know more about his vigilante hobby, proposing they meet up face-to-face for a little private chat. Dan has no idea what this detective is cooking up, but from the sound of it, he isn't looking to make an arrest. If they had been followed at the station, the cop would have grabbed him directly. But since Samuel targeted June first, it means they were being watched way before they ever stepped into the subway. Samuel claims he has business with the girl and doesn't actually care what happens to her, taunting that, unlike him, our deadly serial killer actually cares about her fate. He threatens Dan, saying that if they don't meet in an abandoned building at 10 p.m., the girl's life is forfeit. Without missing a beat, Dan flatly refuses. To him, this cop is just as pathetic as the street thugs he usually hunts, mocking him for needing a hostage to face them. Dan confidently claims that despite the threats, he knows June won't die easily. The moment Dan hangs up, the officer is left puzzled by his total indifference. Were these two not as close as he originally suspected? June's violent coughing cuts his thoughts short as she gasps for air. Samuel finally lets her go, laughing off the chokehold and casually asking if she is all right. He claims she doesn't need to worry about dying because he never planned to kill her. After all, he and his partner, who just stepped out of the shadows, are cops, and cops don't go around murdering teenagers. This only terrifies June even more. Realizing his partner is completely annoyed with the drama, Samuel decides it's probably best to take this little party somewhere else. Samuel says he won't force her to tag along, but politely reminds her that she made a massive scene back at the subway station. Now she's a wanted fugitive, and survival on the streets isn't exactly easy. Plus, if she wants to meet the serial killer again, staying with them is her best shot. Terrified and confused, she realizes she has no choice but to go with these sketchy officers. Miles away, Dan is already tracking her real-time location using GPS. Holding her phone, Samuel quickly realizes she's being monitored in real time. Even if that killer acted completely cold, he's still actively tracking her every move. This makes the killer even more intriguing to him, and he's dying to know what she actually means to him. In the back seat, June quietly tries to read the detective's lifespan, but ever since her big stunt on the train, Jian's special eye had been totally fried and hurt like absolute hell. At this rate, she had zero chance of seeing anyone's remaining lifespan. Right then, Samuel stares at her with way too much intensity, asking if her eye hurts. Just from that creepy line, she knew this guy had some serious red flags. The creepy officer starts mumbling that everything finally makes sense. He tells his partner to keep on driving, because they are about to take a little romantic detour. Climbing into the back seat with a total villain smirk, he warns Jian not to lie to him as they start talking business. Meanwhile, across town, Diam is checking on his delivery. The lady on the phone hooks him up with a secret address and garage password. The second he arrives, he finds a sweet motorcycle waiting for him like a treasure. Knowing his bad track record, she warns him not to wreck this bike. Diam just laughs it off, not his fault if things break. Back to Samuel. During his detective years, he figured out that appearances can tell you a lot, even if a simple cover story is never enough to expose someone's true, twisted nature. Were his suspects just average folks who made a bad choice? Or were they completely rotten to the core, hiding an ugly soul with absolutely zero hope of redemption? Only he could tell for sure. A few days ago, another cop had shown him that viral livestream where Jian made her big debut. He instantly recognized her as the daughter of the serial killer from 12 years ago. His buddy said the guy in the clip was a victim's dad, and Jian only attacked him to save her friend. Samuel played totally dumb when his partner suggested the girl might be connected to the killer's numbers. After the gang fight, the cops noted how sloppy she was getting filmed on camera and leaving footprints everywhere. By Samuel's math, Jian was a literal schoolgirl, yet she was dating a serial killer. He needed answers. So, while interrogating a suspect, Samuel hands over Jian's files and orders the guy to track down his dream girl. If he does it, Samuel promises to make his criminal record disappear. But this crook knows the cops' dirty matchmaking tricks and flat out refuses. To Samuel, this was all just a game. His true goal? Getting to the very root of evil itself. But playing matchmaker with evil has consequences. One wrong move and innocent people die. Later, While joking with his buddies, Samuel hears a radio report about a major bus accident, and the prime suspect sounds exactly like Jian. That immediately catches the partner's attention. Samuel is ready to do whatever it takes to hunt them down. If he fails, people die. It is that simple. He has to foresee death, or someone he secretly cares about is going to get permanently eliminated. Back in the present, Samuel asks Jian why her eyes are hurting so badly. She gives him the silent treatment. Samuel tells her she can be honest. It is not like they are on an official date. To make things easy, he gives her multiple choice. Option 1, dirt in the eye. Option 2, bus crash injury. Option 3, she overused her special power. Hearing option 3, Jian's body reacts instantly, even though she tries to keep a poker face. Bingo! Her reaction tells him everything. He asks what she did to strain her eye, but since she is giving him the cold shoulder, he moves on. Why did she create all that drama on the subway? Option 1, she is a crazy terrorist trying to kill folks. Option 2, she just wanted to stop the bus. As he lists the choices, Jian desperately searches for an answer. Honestly, she is not even sure if these creepy guys are actually real cops. She has no clue what this detective wants, but her gut says answering his questions is a one-way ticket to a very bad ending. Getting no reply, Samuel asks if she is just a cheap terrorist, though he doubts attempted murder is her style. He tells her not to sweat it. He knows she is not actually evil, just misunderstood by a cold world. Without even looking at Jian, the detective asks if he hit the nail on the head. Is that why she is playing follower to a literal serial killer? Furious, Jian snaps. He is totally wrong, knows absolutely nothing about her, and has zero right calling her a murderer. Samuel just stares at her, calmly admitting he might have misjudged her motives. But if she was not out to hurt anyone, what was the play? The only other guess is she wanted to stop the bus. Samuel mumbles that she must have seen it coming, something only she could possibly know. Smirking like he just won a prize, he asks what she knows about the future. Did she know the exact time of the crash? Or maybe she can see how many murders someone will commit. Or, best of all, does she know the exact moment people die? Jian knows this guy is a psycho, but she is not making this easy. So, she flips the script and asks what kind of numbers he can see. If he answers, she will talk. She guesses maybe he can see prison sentences, the number of crimes someone will commit, or even how many times a person can lie to others. While Samuel is still processing her words, a hand suddenly smashes through the car window and grabs him by the collar. From the driver's seat, his partner panics. Glaring at Samuel, the serial killer remarks that it has been ages since he saw such a massive number, then asks what his final hour feels like.